Welcome to the Hawks Nest live stream show. Oh my goodness. Still riding high. Still feeling good. I hope you guys are too. What an amazing draft this past weekend. I put it in the title. It's not an overstatement. It's not me being bombastic. It is the God's honest truth. The Seattle Seahawks in this last draft just had the best draft, in my opinion, they've had in 10 years, going back to 2012. And I don't think it's even close. I've spent the past couple of days not only looking at this draft, looking at the players that we got in this draft, but also looking back at recent drafts once again. We ran a show a couple of weeks ago leading up to the draft, looking at a given time period where there was certainly some struggles by our front office as far as maybe some of their drafting hits and misses go. But there's no denying the 3-year period you've got, 2010 to 2012, it was magnifique. You could do no better. Hall of Famer here, Hall of Famer there, Hall of Famer over there, Hall of Famer everywhere. They were plucking and pulling them from every round, no doubt about it. It was amazing, but there was a little bit of a dip, a little bit of a dive, a little bit of a drop off here over the past few years. And we've had debates in our chat, and I've seen it out there in the Seahawks fandom about who's responsible, who isn't responsible, whether it's been good or whether it's been bad. That's not the argument for us here today. It's not. Because we can disagree on where we see the recent draft history, but where we shouldn't disagree is on this draft history. Because this draft history separates itself in one certain way, and I've been trying to find the way to exactly articulate this, because there is some out there that go, well, I've gotten a few in my comments that say, well, you mentioned you think Schneider's running this last draft, and how do you even know that? They're not doing anything differently than what they haven't done in prior drafts. They've gone after tackles before early. They've gone after running backs early. What's different about this year? And it's a good question. And one that I find myself turning over saying, well, here's where I think I find it to be. The NFL, more than any other sport, is a crapshoot. This is the reason that it's so hard to draft. This is the reason that certain things fall away quickly like sand through your fingers. It is a very hard sport to predict and determine. I don't have to tell any of you that who've had fantasy football teams within those leagues over the years. It's randomized at times, it seems. But there is a certain quotient to it that you can apply of foresight, control, intelligence, reducing the randomization. And you do that by being smart. And the words that come to my mind when I think about this draft and how maybe I can try to push this to those folks who maybe don't understand why this one does look different is the perceived value. Perceived value. You can knock consensus, but the consensus is derived from a multitude of opinions in a multitude of different places. And when you look at what the consensus application would be to judging the Seattle Seahawks draft, they come way back time and again of approving it. There's really only one real spot that they're able to hit, and they're hitting that hard. A lot of it, this is where you see a lot of the naysayers really glomming onto, and we're going to get to that in a second. But there's a reason why on so many other drafts where Seahawks have gotten these D pluses and and this over here, even the famed 2012, right, that had multitude of prognosticators putting D pluses on that draft, this one with the Russell Wilson and with the Bobby Wagner, even a Bruce Irvin, who was a highly effective player himself, not a star, but effective. And people lament that and go, see, this is why these people don't know what they're talking about. And people were working off perceived value at that time. And the perceived value of that draft wasn't good from their D plus was still ridiculous, but it wasn't as good. And now in this draft, for whatever it's worth on that, the perceived value here is appropriate. Charles Cross should have been a top 10 pick. You made him a top 10 pick. Boy Mafe should have been probably in the back end of the first round. Second round was also probably his floor of where he was going to go. You got him there. Kenneth Walker, and we're going to go into Kenneth Walker in a second, much ballyhooed about running back. was going to go in the second round, you got him in the second round. Abraham Lucas, in my opinion, was in that same place of Mafe as far as his value within this draft, especially knowing how important tackles are. You got him back up into the third round. That's an amazing value. And it goes even better from there. Kobe Bryant, we're going to dive into these guys individually really quickly and a couple of very important details with them. But again, you might have got a starter there. Tariq Woolen, third round value, fifth round. Even Tyreek Smith, later in that, a little bit after that point. Okay, some people might have had it at a fourth round value. At no spot in this draft did you reach when every other draft over the last 10 years, once we get out of that magical period, that 3-year period of 2010 to 2012, you were reaching right and left and right and left. So it's amazing from a perceived value standpoint to see such a reverse course in this draft versus how that's been in other drafts where it is reach after reach. No one had, I don't think, in the NFL, other than the Seattle Seahawks, a first-round grade on LJ Collier the year that they made him a first-round pick. I don't think so. And maybe there would have been a team to take Jordan Brooks in the first round. Maybe it would have been the Ravens behind us if we didn't take him, though I'm not so sure on that. Maybe. But that was still considered at that time kind of a bit high to be selected him there. Marquise Blair, head-hunting safety. Guy not without any real position, you're taking high up in that second round. Does he go up in that second round? Or other teams are going to pick him behind you at that point if you don't take him? No, you kind of went a little high. It's not to say these guys weren't prospects or that they weren't going to be taken like an LJ's Collier place, maybe probably up in the top of the third round maybe. But that you just went a little bit higher versus this draft where at every single turn, not only are you getting appropriate value for the appropriate round, but in some cases you're bunny hopping a couple rounds on these guys. And again, there are no certain bets. And again, it's way too early to say in this draft whether or not this will be a success or a failure. As I said, I'm not discounting the randomized aspect or that we don't know what these guys are going to be once they get onto the football field. But what I am saying is that there is a certain, as much as stuff is out of your control, there are things within your control. And Seahawks are taking things into their control with this past draft that is more about being intelligent, less about trying to say, we're going to try to tell you, we're going to outsmart all you guys with these picks and less fitting to type, taking what is in the right place, and it's going to help them so much more in the future, in my opinion, by not moving outside those lines like they had in the past. And maybe they've had some success by moving outside those lines in the past. But for maybe one or two of those successes, we got all these other failures up on the other side of it. I don't see that in this particular draft. And let's look at these individual players. Let's look at these players because this is where no one's really picking these apart, but there is, especially in the running backs case, I want to have a discussion on this. But Charles Cross is unassailable at this point to me. If you've done any of your due research on this, any of your due diligence on this, you have been able to understand that the can't run block stuff is grossly overstated. Does he have some things technique-wise to clean up in his game as far as pass protection goes? Sure. Is he 21 years old and has plenty of time to then grow those aspects into his game? Sure. And is he already bringing a guy that should be at least a league average guy to me almost from day one at the left tackle probably? Yeah. As well as just, cherry on the top on that one again, fits perfectly for what you're going to need him to do as far as in the reach block game. You can see it on his highlights at times where he's got to get to guys out in space, move laterally off the snap, and he accomplished this with ease. Again, I don't think there's a lot of debate here, so I won't dwell on Cross. The guy I want to dwell on a little bit here in a second is going to be Walker. Maffe's another one. To me, first-round grade. The size metrics on this, 4.53, 125 broad jump, 38-inch vertical leap. The most important process, the most important metric, though, of any of those, even beyond those, is the 159 10-yard split. 10-yard split's the first 10 yards on your 40. Pure measurement of raw explosiveness. That's what it is. And you need that as a pass rusher almost first and foremost, especially when you're measuring for future success. Especially. And yeah, he's got the one real true great year of production there at Minnesota, but it was a pretty good year of production. Pretty good year of production. Over here on my right shoulder, you can see what's called the pass rush win rate. I have hammered this on the channel here recently quite a bit. Is pass rush win rate is quite a predictor for future success as far as your ability in the NFL. Now, does it mean that if you rush and you have a 25% pass rush win rate like Hutchinson had last year, that that's what you're going to have in the NFL? No, not that high. It'll be a little bit low, but as a basic barometer, as a predictor of upside, it's shown itself to be pretty good with that. So let's look at those top guys last year with the pass rush win rate as we had entered into this draft. You got Hutch at 25%, Thibodeau at 23%, George Karlaftis at 24%. All of these guys first rounders. Of course, George fell just a little bit. Ajabo at 19%. And then you got Boyd Mafe in there at 19%. Right at the same marker of Ajabo last year. Both of these two guys relatively new to football. It's not like they have the long pedigree, as I understand it, going back to Pee Wee leagues and all that. But a 19% pass rush win rate, which is pretty elite. Beats out, as you can see on my side here, Jermaine Johnson, who went in the first round himself. Again, another guy dropped in that first round. But you can see Maffe's in pretty good company here, isn't he? And below this chart, you can see some certain historical comparisons you can make of recent guys in recent years that went. Odafe away, Kwity Paye, Jalen Phillips all went in last year's draft. A couple of those guys were up at 20%. Old Julari, a really good pass rusher last year, went to the Giants at 24%. A couple of those guys there. And then you've got, of course, Trayvon Walker there at 10%, which is just, again, one of those reasons why that Jaguar pick took some stones. Now, while, again, Mafi's only got the 1 year production, this is true. And it's it's a lot of that sack production of those 7 sacks comes against lesser opponents. That part's true. He got better as the year went along. And I just spoke about him having certain similarities to Ajabo in that he's relatively new to football. And so this is where, to me, again, we get back to the projection state of, even though he doesn't have the 21 years of age of a Charles Cross, he does have still I'm just coming along to this game and figuring this out. And that means that he hasn't reached that top end point of his refinement yet. And he already shows a good amount of refinement. He's not a one-trick bony with his hands. He certainly has his go-to move, which is the swipe, to keeping his feet moving, bouncing off the tackle sometimes with his athleticism. It's just his kind of gig with that, but he's got a swim move. He's got a little, he can long arm it. He's got a little spin move to his game. He's developed a little bit of an assembly even beyond that. So while it's one level of elite production, 4.5 sacks the year before, 3 sacks the year before that, not playing in a full seasons of games before that as well. So a little bit more understandable, I guess, from my standpoint. And I look at him and I go, you just got a top-end edge rusher on the other side. He's going to probably get to operate from the blind side, I believe, because I think Taylor, they're going to try to keep the left side, which is going to allow him that much more opportunity to flourish because, at least historically, our blindside Leo guy has been, it's not going to be, I think, a Leo necessarily like it's been in the past, but somewhat of like that. Leo's going to be allowed to really hunt on that side, really go crazy. Do whatever it takes to kind of get to the quarterback. It is sort of the best, it'd be the most favorable role in this defense, to try to put it that way. So, get hyped again about this pick, hyped about Cross. The one I want to really talk about really quickly here before I get to a couple of the other ones in this draft, I'm not going to dwell long on, then we'll bounce over the chat. We've got a little bit of a short show today. I'm going to be going on to Brendan's channel at 6, so we'll probably wrap up here about 5:30 or so today. But Kenneth Walker is the one, because this is as I've said here in the Hawks Nest, I've got opinions, I got theories, I've got long-held beliefs, but I'm never going to be rigid in those beliefs and say this is absolutely how this has to be all the time, without fail, never deviate. Maybe get the offensive line before you get the quarterback. I might be a hardliner on that one. Yeah, I'm probably a hardliner on that one. But everything else, I'm going to usually try and employ a little bit of flexibility, because though there are hard and fast rules are made to be broken, baby. No, I mean, there's always a time that's called into play where you've got to go a little bit outside of what you want to do and what the rule of thumb is. And when it comes to the Kenneth Walker pick, let me give you guys a little bit of information. Not to give you information, but give you maybe my perspective. Wrong way to put it. The Seattle Seahawks next year have got to run the football. They have tried to be running the football consistently over the last few years, and there's been times they've been dominant in that realm. There's been times they've been consistent in that realm. And there's been a good amount of times they've been inconsistent in that realm. There are various reasons for this. Certainly getting the offensive line better, in my opinion, sits at the forefront of that, but the Seahawks have done that in this draft, so let's take that argument and put that in the back in the back of the car for the moment. Shut up, kids. Stay back there. Let's look at actually the forefront of this, which would be that on top of needing the line, you do need running backs. And what has stood as one of the main issues as far as why the running back room has it, or not the running back room, but why the running game has at times been inconsistent, on top of at times being dominant and at times being consistent, is usually a little bit of more of an injury situation that you can point to, in that you're not able to keep your main guys out there, your lead dogs out there running the ball, and so you're down to 3, 4, 5 on the depth chart, and 3, 4, 5 on the depth chart just don't quite have the same kind of talent as 1 and 2. And while offensive lines do drive, in my opinion, a huge measure of the success of the running game, there's also a part where this line of running backs are ubiquitous in that you basically can flip anyone in and anyone out, and none of them make any kind of difference. While I am a guy that try to go later in the draft, again, I also acknowledge there is a difference from a talent standpoint to selecting a guy early on versus later on. And when I was doing some research on this, my eyes were kind of opened up to a couple of things. I want to see what you guys think in regards to this. I took the last 3 years of data, and this is just raw rushing numbers data. Okay, yes, it's just a basic broad strokes thing. This isn't meant to be a determinable deal. Sometimes I present this stuff and people get up in their anger. Just to be, take of it what you will. In 2019, of the top 20 rushers in the NFL, the top 20, 14 of those top rushers were picked in the first 3 rounds. And the majority of those were picked in the first 2 rounds, 15 of them in that year. 2020, also 14 of the top 20 rushers in the entire NFL were picked in the first 3 rounds. Once again, the majority being in the first 2 rounds of those top rushers. And then we get to last year. And last year, 18 of the top 20 rushers on the board were picked in the first 3 rounds. 6 in the first round, 8 in the second round, 3 in the fourth round. So what this data does tell me is, though I can have a Chris Carson in 2019 that's one of those 20 top rushers who was a later round pick, it's hard for those later run running backs to put up that type of productivity. And as I just said a second ago here with this team and going forward, though we've been able to be inconsistent in the past with the running game at times and less than dominant at times, you always had something to fall back to in those moments in the past, didn't you? That Russell Wilson magic, whether it was pixie dust coming out of his sleeve or not when he was making those throws, you were calling back upon it. You don't have that to call back upon this year. You need the running game to go, bar none. Bar none. So if it gets to a weakened state as it's been in recent years, decimated by injury, your offense will be cooked. Cooked. And when you look at this data, understanding that to get in the top 3 rounds, to get a running back of any significant difference-making ability to at least push up into that top 20 range, at least that's what the data is kind of spelling out, at least subtly here over the last 3 years. And you look at this draft, if you don't take Kenneth Walker in the second round, and then you pair this on down through the depths of the draft, you're looking at a Rachaad White type that you're picking way downstream at that point. Then the drop-off in talent from Walker to then that next running back is significant at that point. Or to White. White's probably a late 3rd round, 4th round guy that now you're probably selecting in the upper reaches of the 3rd round because you're going to stretch because it's now truly a need at that point if you pass on the running back in the 2nd round. Especially understanding in retrospect that this team doesn't seem to have a lot of confidence in Chris Carson's current injury state. So you went out there and got one of the few difference makers at the running back position, and really I think there was really only 2 in this draft. James Cook is fine, but he's going to be a third down running back extraordinaire. Davis Price, selected by the Niners, was a reach and a half for me where they selected him. And Brian Robinson is an Alabama running back. Looks very similar to a lot of Alabama running backs that come out of that program that are not Derrick Henry. Are not Derrick Henry. Also, let's appreciate who Kenneth Walker really is here. Led college conference, or 1,600 yards rushing, damn near led if he didn't. Most broken tackles in college football last year. I just talked about how a running back can help out, how he can be a difference maker. Yes, offensive line will be the main driver to a running back's success, in my opinion. But one of the main things that can then help that offensive line, should it fail, if I can call upon this skill in my running back, is the ability to break tackles. My left tackle just completely whiffed off the blocks, my man. Can you just engage a spin move, get clear of that, use a burst, get 10 yards, and get me a 15 yards on a play that should have been a -3? Gotcha. I got you on that. And he has this in his game. Again, a part of what makes him a difference maker. And by the way, on all those 1,600 yards last year, one fumble. One fumble. Because I'm hearing this stuff about not changing hands and stuff. Does he fumble or does he not? I don't care about changing hands. Is he good with ball security or not? He's good with ball security. He was both the Doak Walker and Walter Camp Player of the Year, both awards. The Doak Walker Award's given out to the best running back in college football. And to give you some reference on this, of some recent guys that have won this award, Eddie George, Garrison Hurst, LaDainian Tomlinson, LT, Reggie Bush, Cedric Benson, Melvin Gordon, Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, Najee Harris, and now Kenneth Walker. Yeah, folks, he's that good. Elements of Alvin Kamara and Le'Veon Bell to his game. Bounces around, just finds the hole. His balance is very close to being special. The Seahawks didn't just get a running back, which is what they would have done if they had waited on into the depths of this draft. Just a guy. Just another DJ Dallas type. Who you got, by the way, in the 4th round? That's where you would have been once again. But you didn't. You recognized the value of the moment and jumped on the guy that I know people are going to hammer on, positional value, positional value, positional value. Okay. And then we end up with your positional value frame getting instead here a cornerback, Andrew Booth. And we end up with Rachaad White. And next year, the running game, which our whole offense is built upon, any success it's going to really have in the passing game will be on what the running game pushes, then gets beaten to nothing because your running back situation goes back into decimation mode. You call upon Rachaad White, who's not enough of a difference maker to overcome young rookie tackles out on the outside. This was a better measure. This was a better plot of success, in my opinion, going with Kenneth Walker on this pick. It makes a lot of sense in retrospect. I can understand the moment if the value argument clips you at the knees for the second, but then just look back at this, look at the recent production of the position, and that putting the investment in the draft, in the running back position at this point recently, in recent history, has bore fruit. Kobe Bryant's the next guy I want to discuss here a little bit, and I will be bending over to you guys in the chat here shortly. Again, a guy I've better appreciated here after the draft. I saw some of his tape. I liked him a lot. I certainly had him in the area of where the Seahawks drafted him from a value standpoint, so I loved that aspect of things. Can't argue again. This is where he was prescribed to go. This is where you selected him. He has the everything they look for from at least prototypical size. Not quite 4.4, but not super slow either. Good short area quickness and burst. But he has very much, watch him on tape. This is a Seahawky cornerback. Watch how he arrives with violence at the catch point. How he just bullies up on wide receivers. How he plays with physicality. I'm looking for the way to quantify those Seahawk corner type profiles, and it's almost one of those things you know when you see it, but it's hard to sort of tell you what every little line of it is. But it's just, he's got that to him, that feistiness to his game, that ability to his game. He's not a slow guy, which is a lot of what some of the narrative you're hearing on. And again, a guy recognized in college football this last year as the best cornerback. Again, it's a little bit like the Kenneth Walker situation. He's the Jim Thorpe Award winner, which goes to the best college cornerback in all of college football. They're not just handing that award out willy-nilly to a tryhard. They're not just handing that out to a little bit of an overachiever. This guy's been a two-time All-ACC first-team selection. And though he doesn't have as many interceptions, when you watch a lot of his tape, he is a titch slow on some of these interceptions where like he'll have it in his hands, bounces off. Another one of his guys like Brian Cook, his safety, picks it off, or it'll just bounce out of his hands where it looked like just missed making the catch on it, or he makes the catch and quite bring it down at the last moment. And maybe his hands are a little dodgy, but he makes a play on the ball. He finds the ball. He's got ball skills. And again, just like with Walker, like I was telling you guys with that Doak Walker, like with Kenneth Walker, Doak Walker, Kenneth Walker, not a coincidence. Like with him, Kobe Bryant's got the Jim Thorpe Award winning. And let me give you a couple of recent cornerbacks, because what I'm trying to tell you with this is that if you look at some of these recent award winners, be it with the Jim Thorpe or with the Doak Walker, yes, it's just an award. But you can also look at these lists and go, yeah, but how have the recent history guys that have won this award gone on to NFL success at a very good rate? And the answer is, hell yeah. Hell yeah. Antoine Winfield, Deion Sanders. Anybody heard of him? Oh, yeah, that Deion Sanders, primetime. Benny Blades, very good career. Brother played for the Seahawks. He played for us for a hot minute. Terrell Buckley, Deion Figures, Roy Williams, Terrence Newman, Malcolm Jenkins, Eric Berry, Patrick Peterson, Desmond King, Adoree Jackson, Minka Fitzpatrick, Grant Delpit, and Trevor Moehrig, who just got drafted in the second round last year, I believe, by the Jaguars. So not a bad pedigree to be walking away from with Cody Bryant there. And again, you got it in the fourth round. Do not be shocked. Do not be surprised if this man is starting day one, and starting well. Tariq Woolen, let's wrap this up with a couple of quick notes on these final guys. Tariq Woolen, you got the toolsiest corner that Carroll has ever had in his era here. You took a guy who is a master painter and you handed him every proverbial color that exists in Adobe Photoshop in his palette. And this is what you've given Carroll and Tariq Woolen. It's not an overstatement. It is just fact. Nobody comes close from an explosion standpoint, speed standpoint, length and size standpoint, not even Sherman. And the Sherman comparisons come into why I also want to try, if I can, to knock a little bit of the legs out of the main two criticisms that are being lobbed at Tariq Woolen at this point. Because what we're hearing on one end is that he's the roughest corner that's ever come out of the draft for the Seahawks. And man, is he going to be a work in progress. And gosh, is his game so just rough. And oh God, the tape's so rough. My God. What did we expect? He just transitioned to the corner position 2 years ago. Yeah, he's a wide receiver convert. He's just coming over to that side. Yeah, his tackling's not going to be good 2 years after going from being a wide receiver, to a cornerback. There's a little bit of dog that's going to be missing in a wide receiver to cornerback transition, at least initially. There's a level of physicality here at play that you don't deal with, that you're dealing with now, that's a little shock to the system and takes a little bit of time to catch up to. Richard Sherman wasn't necessarily the greatest tackling corner out the gate when he first began. It came along. And then he became outstanding in that realm. Trayvon Diggs is a wide receiver, cornerback convert out of Alabama, who when you watched his tape about Trayvon Diggs, you went, okay, the ball skills are amazing. He is going to get interceptions at the next level. No doubt about that. But he doesn't want to tackle to save his life. And he is taking the cheese on every single double route and biting on things that aren't there and biting on every pump fake. And he's going to give up a grip of yards too on the back end. And that's what Trayvon Diggs has been to the extreme degree on all of those elements. Every time I watch him, I still end up kind of, I don't know. cringing when I watch him try to go out there and make a tackle. He doesn't want to do it. And maybe Tariq will want to do it at some point or won't want to do it at some point. But making a determination at this point that it's a finished product in any way, shape, or form, when it's not close to that, when that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a ball of clay, a palette with every color under the sun, and Carroll the biggest of brushes to paint with, being that this is legitimately the cornerback whisperer. This is legitimately maybe the best defensive back developer in the NFL over the last 20 years. Show me a better one. And he's done so with lesser parts and pieces, without the prime time, without the creme de la creme. And now at least with the tools, you're giving him the creme de la creme. Tyreek Smith, not going to say a lot about this pick here. Beyond that, good value again. Guy was slated by some to be picked 4th, early 5th maybe. I think that he's at the very least as far as the bottom end. And I think these last 3 picks I want to talk about really quickly are, when you're looking in the depths of the draft at this point, you're looking for role players as much as you're looking for stars. You're looking for role players or guys like Tariq Woolen that have this incredible tool set that you can refine and build upon and eventually get them onto the field once you've had a chance to really train them up. These other guys, though, you're hoping for special teams play or, again, to fit a role. And with Tyreek Smith, special teams will definitely be in that aspect of things, but also he is a very good run stopper from what I could see. He sets the edge well. He doesn't get blown out of his hole. He's pretty good about holding his ground down there. As a pass rusher, he is missing twitchiness. He's missing a lot of bend. He doesn't have a lot of explosion, but he tries really hard, and he does have an assembly of moves that he can call upon, but you're getting, at least as a baseline, an early rundown defender who can maybe spell a guy like Taylor who can get a blow, come back then out into more of passing type situations, taking guys off the field where that's a weakness of his game for another guy who maybe is now coming out with one of the strengths of his. Bo Melton, a guy, not a lot of production at college. Boy, go back and watch this tape on Rutgers. It's rough tape because the quarterback position is some of the worst that I've had to watch. And I've watched a lot of tape on bad quarterback play here leading up to this draft. And I'll tell you, the Rutgers is right up there with the worst of the worst. Melton would have separation on guys, and the shoulder would the throw would turn into a back shoulder throw time and time again. The quarterbacks would put him in bad positions time and time again to try to make the catch way harder than it had to be. And sometimes he would still make that catch. He lays his body on the line. He's drawing a lot of comparisons to Doug, I think as much because of what he does once he gets past the line of scrimmage in his route running and then in his quickness to the catch point as far as his jumping ability. He doesn't have some of the short area stuff of Doug with the footwork and some of that where Doug was just lightning quick off the line of scrimmage. Not quite there on that aspect of things, but a guy that will fit in really well as far as special teamers. He'll be a gunner, as well as he could have gone to other bigger colleges. Just being at Rutgers and not a lesser university, at least from a college football perspective, he was recruited to go to other bigger universities, but his parents went to Rutgers, so he wanted to go to Rutgers. So maybe not something to be understated there. Another guy like we were talking about with Kobe Bryant as well as a team captain. And finally, just to finish up on Tariq Young, like I said, you're looking to find rotational guys. You're looking to find a guy that you can put into depth. You're looking to find a guy with the role. Tariq Smith maybe fits him out as a role as a run stuffer. You get, I just lost my train. We get with Bo Melton, a guy that can give you a special teams ace / he can legitimately push Freddie Swain and Penny Hart on this roster as the 4th or 5th wide receiver. I don't think Penny Hart's I certainly think he can knock Penny Hart away because I think he's going to be bigger and a little bit better as far as a special teams guy go in that realm, but I would not put it out the door that he could knock out Freddie Swain as well, who has not necessarily created a super high water mark of play to keep himself, locked into that number 4 role. When you look at Tariq Young, he's another role guy to me. This team, this is a little bit like the running back situation. You need a fly sweep guy in this offense. And frankly, you need a fly sweep motion-based guy who can be a threat in that realm in the modern day NFL. Just throughout this offense, you need it in the NFL. Like it or not, this is where the NFL is going. The man goes in motion. The linebackers now need to adjust what gap they're playing pre-snap to adjust to that motion. You move those linebackers out of those pre-diagrammed gaps for just a moment, for just a couple of steps, okay? Motion comes, Now there's a hole open there immediately off the snap that wasn't there a second ago. And if you have a running back who might have, I don't know, 4.4 speed, they can get in through that hole and you can take advantage of that type of lane that's created simply by the pre-snap motion. But the linebackers aren't leaving that gap. They're not bailing on that gap responsibility unless that guy's a threat, unless that guy's a Deebo Samuel or a Cordero Patterson or a guy who truly, if he gets the ball in his hands, it's going to be 9 yards of stealing candy from a baby upfield. You've got to have a guy to do that. And Tyler Lockett, Freddie Swain, Penny Hart, trying to run that play doesn't instill that type of fear in the defense's hearts. They're not going to move out of those gaps with those guys. This kind of guy, Drake Young, I don't know what he can be as a receiver. I don't know what he's going to be in development on that aspect of things, but is a guy that can take fly sweeps across the motion, a bubble screen guy, a guy that you can work like that. Brendan's even talked about having him as maybe a guy that you could put up in the backfield as an extra running back. He's got a size at 6'2", 4.39 speed, and good with the ball in his hands. That's the other element. Not just the speed and the size quotient, but very comfortable in the yak game. Very comfortable as a runner. Understands how to use angles against tacklers. And so you need to have that threat in play. And like I said, to begin this with Kenneth Walker, the running game has got to go next year, or at least go into the future if we're talking about next year just being a rebuild year. So to make that happen, you've got to take advantage in all ways of the running game. It can't be this old school approach that we've engaged in for the last 10 years of we're going to just hammer up into the A gap all day long and just we'll wear you down. Eventually we'll break your back. The modern NFL is not going to play that. We'll rotate in defensive linemen. We'll keep them fresh. You ain't breaking no backs. So now you've got to stretch laterally. We got to incorporate more outside zone, more of the fly sweep element to start to stretch those defensive tackles up out of their gap. And the beautiful news for Coach Carroll is if they do this, then that inside stuff will open back up again. And those holes will be huge. So this is why I like this draft. I'm going to barrel over to you guys in the chat. I know I've been going on for about 35 minutes here, so sorry about that. But I did really want to talk about this because there was just a couple of little tidbits of this draft I've walked away from going, I don't feel, I'm hearing this and I don't feel this way about this. And especially as it concerns the running back situation. I understand the positional value stuff, but always understand too that whatever philosophy or rule of thumb you have, nothing happens in a vacuum. There are contextual matters at play that you've got to incorporate into your assessment of a pick or a situation. And you can like it or not, but you have a coach here who wants to run the football. In a passing league, that's what he wants to do. And that's not changing anytime soon. And so we've got to embrace that. And embracing that might mean you have to stretch a little bit outside your positional value chart. All right, thank you for listening here today, as well as I just want to put one final thank you to everybody here. We had as an amazing a four-day run here with between the live streams and some of the videos I posted out. I think we had something like 60,000 views or something in combination of all the videos. It was absolutely amazing the amount of people we had watching here. So thank you to everybody in regards to all your support watching, hitting the like button. That's what I was telling you, folks. You hit that like button. It helps us grow. It helped us grow. We got a bunch of new subscribers, a bunch of new people that were able to see the channel and be aware of it now, thanks to what you're doing with that. So I really appreciate all of the support. Love you guys being with me every day of that draft. As I say, we're going to be doing that as a yearly. It's going to be a yearly event here. So already now I begin on the prospects for 2023. Let the great grind begin. But if you do like what you're listening to today, please do hit that like button. And if you're not subscribed, we are trying to get to 10,000 here by the end of the year if I can do it. And we are on the road already to start things off this year with our best year of growth. So if you're not already on board, get on board. I've got some things percolating here in the background to keep kind of expanding on this channel, but do appreciate you guys nonetheless for watching, however you watch. Maxwell Stern, the league should fear Pete and John. You know they should after a draft like that. William Hanby says, this damn weather's dragging. It's wet. It's dragging here too, man. It's wet and cold, and yeah, it's not been fun. It's not been fun. I'm waiting for spring to kick in over here. It's a typical Pacific Northwest spring right now, where we're just basically going to be drenched wet right up until the sun starts to shine in June 28th. DH, we need a quarterback? I don't know. I don't know if we do right now. Quarterback wouldn't be bad, but I don't know if we need one. I don't know if there is one. AZ Boys, we need a line first. Exactly, AZ Boys. Get the line right first, then we'll go get the quarterback. Now, I don't know if you folks are starting to look at some of these quarterbacks in next year's draft, and I'm not talking about just Bryce Young and Stroud. I mean, there's some guys here in this next year's draft. There's some quarterbacks. And now there's a whole year of play, and, Spencer Rattler last year was this guy that everybody was like, oh, he's going to be the guy, and then he flamed out completely where he's trying to reclimate himself. But I think we're going to look so much more smarter in retrospect for waiting on the quarterback situation as opposed to biting this year. Seahawks Jose Rodriguez says, hits the like button, people. Thank you, Seahawks Jose Rodriguez. And of course, a longtime mod here. Jose's got a great little channel of his own on the other side, so please do sub on over to him if you get a chance. Brendan Taylor, Cross, Lucas, and Lewis is a solid foundation. Huge upgrade since last year. Very well said. Very well said. And that's right. I mean, this is how it goes. It doesn't take you investing for years on into the line. You can just spend a couple quick years of investing a lot to get it started. And the beautiful news is once you have this ball kind of rolling, now you can augment and add or let go as you need. It's almost self-propelling a little bit where it's like, well, okay, Lewis is coming up now for his free agent contract, and we don't really want to pay him a free agent contract, but we'll just put it this year. We'll allot a second round to the right guard, and or whatever, third round again to the right guard, and the rest of the line's taken care of, or something like equivalent to that, as opposed to you lose Lewis and you got nothing else in your line. It's like, okay, we have really nothing now. Now we got to pay him, and we might have to pay a little bit more than even the market's going to pay because we can't risk losing him. It puts you in a little bit of a better leverage standpoint as well, on top of just the returns on the field are going to be phenomenal. I got a couple super chats here, so bear with me here, folks. MJ Seahawk with a $5 donation. Thank you, MJ Seahawk, for that. He says, Kobe Bryant's initials are CB, and the only thing Pete does well is fun CBs. That's right, man. Yeah, I mean, Pete's biggest derrider, Pete's biggest knocker out there, can still not take away from him the fact that he understands how to coach up cornerbacks. He knows what he's doing, especially when you get a guy that hasn't had bad habits that have already leaked into his game, where he can really get a guy that's fresh, doesn't know what he doesn't know, and he gets to teach him, like a sensei up on a mountaintop, And Tariq's going to go up to that mountaintop this offseason. Carroll's just going to have him punching wood, right? That Kill Bill movie. Thanks for the $5 donation. Daniel Bay with a $5 donation. Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate you as well. He says, seeing the past 6 years of first and second round running back picks, the percentage of productive players is near 100% and a high percentage on difference makers. Kenneth Walker III, exclamation point, baby. That all right, Daniel? That all right? I'm with you on it. And I'm brought to Daniel's side on this slowly, hesitantly. As he said, I went back and looked at this at the last few years. I've been operating from the context of just every year draft from the 4th to the 7th round and take a player there. But, the league goes in different trends and different marks. And what was a trend even 5-6 years ago may not be a trend today. We always got to keep analyzing this stuff and adjusting tactics to what is really ruling the day and being the most productive way to accomplish what we're going to try to accomplish offensively speaking. But well said, Daniel, and thank you for the donation. I do appreciate it. Big Mac super chat at $10. Thank you, Big Mac. He says, best draft ever. Thank you, bro, for all the great information. Let's go Hawks. Hey, let's go, Big Mac. You're right. Best draft ever might be just right on this. It's going to be hard to overtake 2 drafts in 2010 and 2012 that had 2 Hall of Fame players basically out of it. It's going to be hard to overtake that. This might be, like they say, pound for pound, right? There might be a best all-time fighter in Muhammad Ali, but they'll say, but pound for pound, Sugar Ray Robinson. They'll say, but pound for pound, Sugar Ray Robinson's the best fighter all time. Well, maybe we end up looking at this draft, Big Mac, saying pound for pound, pick for pick. This draft is maybe the best all-time draft for the Seahawks. I know it's too early to tell, but I'm telling you, this was an amazing draft, end to end. And even in those great drafts of 2010 or 2012, you had some dead water marks. They say there's this dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico right now. And even in your great drafts where at the front ends were good, there's still sort of these dead zones in it. This might be a draft that doesn't have as many of those dead zones, if any. Thanks for the $10 donation, though. Appreciate you. Megan Gock Roger is celebrating 5 months. Thank you to my lady from down under. Hope you're doing well, Megan. Says, best draft in years. In Pete and John, I trust. I love it, Megan. They'll start earning my trust back if they have drafts like that. They'll start bringing me very quickly over the side of a believer. I'll become monkeys there with the, now I'm a believer. But thank you for all your months. Thank you for all your time as a member, Megan. I do appreciate it. And Michael Pontikowski, thank you for subscribing. Appreciate you, brother. Awesome for doing so. Brandon Taylor says Drew Lock can be just as good as Jimmy G. He just needs good coaching and support. Well said, man. Well said. And look, I mean, the Niners have gotten with Jimmy G to a Super Bowl and then right up into the edge again to another one, which I would never have, where I sit with Jimmy G and my assessment of Jimmy G is I would never have thought he could have gotten there on his talent, and he's gotten there. It's a team sport, and quarterback has positional value, but I think we are also getting to that place in this sport where the quarterbacks and their salary demands and how finite the cap is, we're going to quickly get to a point of starting to have to remeasure these second and third tier guys as we have them labeled and reevaluate whether or not really it is still the best metric or the best way to go of my guy's the next guy up, and now I've got to pay him top of the market money in this NFL versus looking another direction. Miamek says Baker injured his shoulder 2 times in 2 years in a row. Could affect his throwing ability. It could. I think it is on the off shoulder. I don't know about the year before. I'm not sure on that one, but I thought for sure it might have been on his off shoulder, the other injury. Still, though, I'm not a Baker guy at this point. I don't know what Baker. I don't know. I'm just not. And look, it's the Seahawks front office appears in the same boat because they also appear not to have shown very much. I've heard the interest has been tepid at best as far as the Seahawks towards Baker Mayfield at this point. Could change if they end up releasing him, but I don't think they're just going to release him in $8 to $18 million. AZ Boy says Walker's going to be a good running back. Hell yeah, I think so. Why do I still on the draft high? Good, me too, man. Let's talk about how strategic this draft was. Edge, cornerback, offensive tackle, receiver are the 4 most expensive spots, and Seattle doubled up on each. Less likely to need to sign high free agent money now. So smart. Absolutely. I would say especially, I think edge does tend to be a bit of a premium cost, but you can also you can stack edge through rotation and still put, you still have to pay a little bit, but it's not as bad. I think cornerback has proven recent history that we can get by with putting a little bit less in there, even when we didn't have the talent. And this is saying now we have the talent coming in. But to me, what stands out most within that why is the tackle. Look at the contract given out to Jack Conklin. Look at the contract just given out this past offseason to Teron Armstead. You are priming the pump if you've got to go out and pay for offensive line production. Not to mention at that point, you're getting a guy like in the case of Armstead, just a lot of injuries there. A lot of mileage taken off those tires. I love the fact that they addressed the tackle position for this reason almost alone. But you're right. Doubling back down on these other positions, even if these receivers are not nothing, if the chance of one of them hitting at that point on a cheap deal, if you have this guy able to overtake Freddie Swain being Bo Melton, and he's now your 4th wide receiver for the next 3 years on a cheap rookie deal who occasionally can slide in as a 3 or slide in as a 2, that is amazing value to be able to derive from the 7th round. If Tariq Young can be a guy that allows you to maybe be the fly sweep guy around Eskridge if Eskridge goes down, and he able to be that for you for a half season or 3/4 of a season and just that one role, that's amazing value. And yeah, you should be on that high. Why do I? We should be on that high because this draft is that good. Michael Ponikowski brings up a great point. He says at the Hawks Nest, Michael, you're the next comment. My bad, Ben. Meow Mix says, anyone notice how many YouTubers not Hawks Nest? Thank you. Appreciate you giving me credit on that. Not me now. Keep bringing up how old Mafe is at 23, but don't mention Abe Lucas's age, who is also 1 month older than Mafe. Yes, I do. And I'll answer you this question on why they're not doing that. And the reason that they're not doing that, and it's a very smart observation on your part, Beyond Mex, with this one, actually. And I've got a couple reasons on this one. First off, reason is Lucas is pure refinement. Is he a pure prospect? No, he would have gone in the first round if he was a pure tackle prospect. There's some things for him to clean up. But as far as from a technical aspect, having 30 straight starts at the position, he's kind of unassailable in that realm of things. And I didn't bring him up here in my recent evaluation because I don't think I should have to. The guy's got, on even the most pessimistic draft boards, a second round grade, and you got him in the third round to play right tackle. This team hasn't invested in its right tackle in nearly its history. And Jermaine Ifedi, you drafted a guy who was probably better suited to be a guard than he was a tackle when you took him in the first round. Chris McIntosh, taken back in the day in Holmgren's day, didn't even play a start in the NFL because his neck got detached and broken. You've done nothing from the right tackle position. And now you've gotten a guy in investment here who's just outstanding. But with Mafe, because his game isn't as well fully rounded out as Lucas, they go, well, you drafted an old player with unrefined technique, whereas with Lucas, you have an old player who's got the refined technique, so he's going to hit the floor that much faster. But the thing that I push back on those people that are pushing to the age argument of Mafe that they're missing a little bit here is, if you've got a guy who hasn't played a tremendous amount of football overall, he doesn't have those years going back before college football where he's just kind of getting started and getting going once he gets into Minnesota, and so he's got to start from the ground up walking in. That might be a guy you give a little more leeway to and rope to, as far as saying, well, he's an older prospect, so there's no more tapping in anything else in his game. It's done. It's cooked. The die is cast. I think that you open it up to going, no, there's a little more room for refinement at this point because he's just still learning the game. And I think he fits into that point for me, Meow Mix. Micah Bonikowski at the Hawks Nest. How do you feel about Dakota Shepley, one of our backup centers? Any potential in him? He's a movement-based guy. Certainly, you say that to me, I go, yeah, there's going to be potential with that. The Seahawks have talked a lot about being high on him in the background. I don't know how much I believe in that because, sometimes they'll say they're high on guys, and it's like, okay, are you really high on him, or are you just trying to keep him, thinking, keep working, kid, like maybe there's a chance. But I don't know. I don't have a ton of information on him outside of good mobility. I saw a bit of tape here and there on him when we got him. Nothing blew me away, but you need the centers that can move. And that's why they brought Blythe in here and paid him $4 million, is that this scheme needs its center who can move out in space. Shepley can do that. I don't have a lot of hope for him, though, at this point, because I just think he's just kind of a guy, or at least I need to see a little more tape to be able to draw any kind of conclusions on him. Maybe that's a better way to put it. Joe Bannock says Baker will be here soon. Oh, is it inevitable, Joe? Very well could be. Very well could be. Herbicide says, so Cam Hayward, is that who we're expected to take as quarterback next year? Do you guys know anything about him? Cam Hayward. I don't know anything about Cam. I'm a Will Levis guy myself, Herbicide. But I still need to look at Richardson's tape. I got so many guys. There's the Miami kid I haven't looked at yet. So many great quarterbacks for next year to look at. Where to begin? Where to start? But Ellie, dear Lord Jesus, please delivereth the Seahawks Will Levis for Xmas next year. I promise to never ask the football gods for anything else. Please do, gods. Please up there. If you could, when you have the time, deliver us thine Levis into thine draft. He has shades of a poor man's Josh Allen, and I think he would be magnificent. UE2K. Purpose of the draft is to fill your team with great players available that year, regardless of position. Taking the best player at a particular position is exactly the goal. Walker is our best pick. Well said. Well said, Huey. Love it. Banana Toppin says, Cat. And we got the kitty up here. Okay. I brought her in close here for you guys today. She gets a little lonely back there when it's, yeah. She gets a little lonely. Okay. You sleep on. Why do I? Will Levis looks like the next Josh Allen. I will be watching all the Kentucky games this year. He can make every throw, quick release with a cannon, and throws with touch, timing, and anticipation. Want him. I'm with you. You watch Will Levis's tape, you're going to be blown away. Kid is an absolute gamer who also has physical tools, right? He's not just one of those physical tool guys that has no feel for the position or he plays with a sense of weakness. He's got what you normally get in the 6-foot arm-challenged guy he takes to a prototypical build. I'm certainly looking forward to being able to watch his games this year and see if he can continue to develop. I think he's going to end up as QB1 when it's all said and done next year. Though, again, I haven't looked at everybody's tape as of yet, so this is me certainly making a little bit of a prognostication, but it's just that good. And once you, with Allen and Stroud, you both go, it's good. I like it. Both of them, you go, okay, I like it. But you're not, when you see it with Levis, you go, yeah, I see it. I'm not just going, yeah, it's good. I'm going, whoa, okay. All right, he's got that. Chase Stern with a $10 donation. Thank you, Chase. Very kind of you, man, for all your donations. He says, have you watched Boy Mafe tape? If so, what do you think? Yeah, I've watched a tremendous amount of Boy Mafe tape. He got better as the year went along this past year. I think that also lines up with what you saw in his recent history here. Because if you look at him, like I said, what would you expect to see? I'm showing his stats up here over my right corner of the 4 years at Minnesota. What would you expect to see from a guy who is really new to the sport and just coming to college, but he's got all these freakish physical tools? Well, you would look for slow and steady improvement in play and production. First year, 0.5 sacks. Next year, 3.5 sacks. The year after that, 5.5 sacks. Then this year, 10 sacks. 12 tackles to 14 tackles to 27 tackles to 34 tackles. Not only this year, I guess is what I'm saying, but throughout his career, throughout the season, not only this year, but throughout his career at Minnesota, there has been this tactile growth within his game. And so when I watch his game, though it is inconsistent, I gravitate towards more what I see in the flashes of his play. And it's more than flashes. It's not terribly inconsistent, but it isn't consistent. That's kind of the key with it. But what you see in his ability with his hands is a natural ability to clear himself of the defender. It's not the Aiden Hutchinson refinement or Bowie-like refinement where he's doing karate moves on you with his hands to get past. It's just that he's very violent and strong with them. He's physically freakish. I mentioned at the top of the show that 6'5" measurement with the 159 10-yard split and the vertical leap that's up at 40 inches. They just don't come packaged like that in that build. And he's not completely just a rough, where there's just one move that he has and that's all he calls upon. Like I said, he's got the swim move, he's got the swipe, he's got a spin, he can do the long arm stab move and utilize his strength. So there's a bit more to his game and what he's bringing to the table there. But still, there's going to be some more that he needs to work on. But I also think that he's going to, especially if they put him up at the Leo end of things as a rotational guy out the gate, he's going to give you production in the first year, probably 4 or 5 sacks, just spelling Owusa. Yeah, Mix, the Hawks Nest, your thoughts on Woolen playing the gunner role on special teams? I don't know if that's necessarily going to be his role. I mean, again, they're talking about the gunner needs to be a little bit of a tenacious cat. You'd love that to be ideal. I know where you're going with that. You get 4-2 going up the field, and nobody's going to be able to return anything because he's going to be the punt returner before the ball's even arrived. But I need to see a little more of the tenacity aspect because you got to be able to fight off those double teams on the outside. You've got to be a bit dogged there. I don't know why, but to me, a Melton seems like more of the guy that would be one of your gunners on one of those sides, and then maybe Kobe on the other. Joseph Smiley, we have Adams, Diggs, solid D-line, good rushers. Our offense, even with Geno or Locke, is elite. I see us surprising a lot of people and making a deep run into the playoffs. Ooh, Joseph, I like it. I like it. Well, if it's going to happen, if you get into the playoffs next year, and we're going to eventually do a show built around this, because I'm an optimistic cat, and I like to look at potential happy endings. There is a pathway to this team, like all teams in the NFL. This is the NFL. This is the NFL. And there are pathways for every team to get into the playoffs. And this team is no different. Certainly a team that has had fairly good recent success, of at least as far as being a competitive team. You've not been a bottom dweller of the NFL where there's so much just to pull yourself up off the canvas like a rocked fighter. That's not the case here. That's not the case at all. You're playing on a last place schedule next year. You certainly have made a lot of different moves. And if these linemen come in, if a lot of these highly projected draft picks come in and hit the ground running, that does speed up everything as far as the motion of the rebuild and the potential of you getting out there and winning games next year and being a contender. It would be great to see. The pathway there, Joseph, is two things. Defense, running the football. I didn't mention quarterback within that. But if your pathway is to get into that playoffs, the two things you need rolling. Defense, running the ball. And that would be the pathway to arrive at that. Herbicide says, I'd love to get Levis or Bryce. They're not expected to be there when we get to pick. So Cam Hayward, I guess. You never know. Don't forget, Herbicide, we have 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks. So that may become the case, but we have to let this just needs to play out before we can come to a determination of how it's going to go. As I was saying, too, let's remember as well, we've got to get another year of tape on all these guys. We don't know what's going to happen to them this year. Spencer Rattler, Sam Howell were your 2 top quarterbacks going into last year's draft by far. Everybody was like, they're no doubt top 10 quarterbacks. These are great talents. And then we got through the college football season, and what happened? Spencer Rattler's transferring to a new college, and Sam Howell selected in the 5th round. So we got to be careful and pop our brakes on making too much of a determination of what we know for sure in those realms until the full year plays out. Megan Gock-Rogers says, 1 week later, and I'm still so damn excited about this draft. Not to brag, but I told you so about Crosby. So excited and can't wait to see him live. You tell me about him, Megan. You did for sure. And I'm just as stoked. I love the Cross pick. Love it. Meowmix says, we just need a game manager quarterback, the same role Wilson played in 2012-14. Agreed. I think that's where this team's moving for now. I mean, you don't have to like it, but this team was productive having a game manager like that before. And if you do build up the right super team around a game manager, you can make this work. It's not the road never taken, so to speak. It has been taken. People have found success upon it. Alexander Wheeler says, I think running back is being undervalued by people. Did some research and found that 27 of the 36 first and second team all-pro running backs are first and third rounders. If you need a reliable back, you need to pick them high. If you only need depth, picking lower is okay, but we need someone who can reliably start this year since Carson is likely gone and Penny is a question mark. Very well said, Alexander, and I love your stat there. 27 of 36 first and second team all-pro running backs are first to third rounders. And you pair that with the stat that I just provided about the production of running backs in the last 3 years, and that being that you're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of about, what would we say, 83% of them were picked between the first and third rounds. So it's, again, where a little bit of this data is starting to skew towards teams are getting better at quantitatively identifying who the best running backs are of a given draft and starting to pick them high, especially as it pertains to the second round. Maybe not the first. Maybe that remains now territory where they've learned we're not biting very much. But certainly into the second round and absolutely into the third. Great point there, Alexander. I love that stat. Benelli says, I'm giving Pete another chance, but if he doesn't get Levis next year in the draft, I'm done. Joseph says the NFC is not like the AFC. It's wide open. It is wide open, man. It is. It's a lot easier path through the NFC this year, and you've got two grand old grandfather quarterbacks running the top two teams, which, if God forbid anything happens to grandpas, that door starts swinging way wide open. Way wide open. Meowmix says, one thing analysts aren't mentioning is how positional value is different for each team. Coach Carroll values running backs and safeties more than what other teams value them at. It's well said, Meowmix. As I say with it, you can't look at these situations through every case of it being a vacuum over every team is equal. We can have a discussion about whether or not you'd like to see this team passing more or not, but that's not the bottom line of the reality of the situation. Coach Carroll's here, and he's going to want to run the football at the least, if not more, I would say, but at the very least 50% of the time. And to do that, as I've said, you can't just do that with a philosophy. You don't just say, well, we're going to run the football, and that means that we're going to commit to it through 4 quarters, and then we'll eventually be effective with it in the 4th quarter because we've worn you down. That's not a strategy that's going to work. Not for a team that needs to move the chains within the context of this West Coast offense. So getting a running back that's able to move those chains, get an extra couple yards on a play where another running back might get stopped but not behind the chains, that's of tremendous value. UE2K says, glad you've come around to my thinking on running backs, Brandon. Better late than never. Well, like I say, UE, I'm not ever hardened into a stance of saying I can't be moved off of a spot to a given territory. I always am trying to take in new data, so I never remain too rigid. I will say this though, Yui, in our long going debate on this, I still tell you that though I'll give more running backs appreciation here. Part of me signing off on this pick also has to do with the fact that they took 2 tackles in this draft at the front of the draft as well. Because my counter to you on this has always been that offensive lines drive running back success every bit as much as a running back and his talent. Now, maybe where I'm coming along with you on this, Huey, is that I'm starting to understand that there's more of an either the talent of the running back along with the talent of the offensive line. But I don't think you just do it with the talent of the running back either. I think it does require more beyond that. And I think, as I would like with a quarterback, I think you got to get the line in place first, and then you can start making these kind of moves. Brian Myers, nobody should get mentally locked into a quarterback. They will die on the vine for next year. Things will be totally different come next draft. Guaranteed. Yeah, we don't know how this is going to play out. I mean, and like we said too, we've looked at the quarterbacks that could be prospects available. We don't know what's going to happen league-wide with a quarterback situation. You might be thinking right now is completely locked in. That quarterback will never go for at least the next 4 or 5 years from insert a team. But you sometimes don't know. The NFL, as we're learning, is more and more fluid every year. And so we don't know if there may be a quarterback who comes up who we didn't think would be available, who becomes available. It certainly is within the realm of possibility. AETV, we need a quarterback. We're not throwing a Super Bowl. We're not winning a Super Bowl this season with Locke or Smith. This is the developmental year for us. AETV, I agree with you. And I do think we need a quarterback. The question is about timing of quarterback. And I do hear, though, people out there that want to see the Baker Mayfield thing. I get it. I understand. My contention on the Baker Mayfield is if you're bringing Baker Mayfield in this year to sacrifice from future costs, is it really worth it if Baker Mayfield is only going to make you a game or 2 better? Do we honestly believe that Baker Mayfield's going to take this roster to the Super Bowl? I think even the most ardent Baker Mayfield supporters would say no. So if that's not the case, and if indeed his best case scenario is to slide you into that same back door of the playoffs that we've landed in time and time again, only to then get catapulted out of the second round of the playoffs, then it probably doesn't mean that it's worthwhile to sacrifice future assets to go get Baker Mayfield now. And you might be going, well, how would I be sacrificing future assets if it was just a 1-year deal? And let me tell you, because if you bring in Baker and let's say you pay half of his contract, that's $9 million you're paying this year. $9 million you could have saved and moved into next year's cap space when you will then be ready to compete. So what's better? An extra primetime rotational rusher, a lockdown cornerback, a top five center in the league at that time for $9 million a year. Hell, Lindsley was only costing like $6.5 million for the Chargers last year. So what's better, Baker for 1 year of 1 or 2 games better, or a Corey Lindsley-like center onto the offensive line? What would we rather have? Just saying. Eddie Fonsette, only time will tell how good this is. I know he's punk, but Baker is better than Geno or Locke. Yeah, I don't disagree with folks that tell me that he's better. But that's not our. To me, it's a little bit. Let's reframe this. Let's reframe this discussion a little bit. Is Baker better than Geno and Locke? Maybe a little bit. Is he significantly better? I don't think so. And if we're talking significantly better, we're talking he can make this team 4 games better. He can make us a true Super Bowl contender. I'm not talking about best quarterback in the league state here. I'm just saying he would have that effect. I don't know that I've seen enough from Baker to believe that. And I'm not throwing shade at Baker again. I agree with your deal that he is better than these two guys, but I think it's a marginal improvement, and that marginal improvement again is not enough for me to give up that future ability to really put the pedal to the floor. Benelli says, I'd give my right nut for Levis right now. Mentally locked in is an understatement. It'd be hilarious is like, it would be like one of the best like trolls all the time. Like Carol goes up to your door and is like, knocks on your door with like medical guys and dressed all up in schmucks and stuff. And he's like, all right, well, today's the day, Benelli. What? No, we're going to do this. We'll give up whatever it takes. But I do want that nut. I want that nut. Yeah. No, right now. We'll just do it on the couch. It's okay. No, you said you do it. You said... Jack Turner, love the Walker take. I really like the pick and haven't had a true bell cow back since Marshawn. Rawls had moments. Carson and Penny had moments. But Walker can be that guy for us. Super hyped. You should be super hyped, Jack. You should. And I looked at these running backs very closely through this draft. There's running backs I did like in the depths of this draft. Rashad White's good. Cook is good. Samir White, good. Some good backs, solid backs. But Walker, and to my opinion, Breece Hall were outstanding backs, were true upper-level running backs. And if this was 15 years ago in the NFL, they would have been taken in the first round. The positional value thing that's being presented here, it's been engaged. He falls into this where he falls in the second round because of the modernized approach to running backs and how the NFL views them. Not one running back was taken in the first round. It was already baked in. But hell yeah, Jack. Hell yeah. Buck Skull Gang in the house, thank you for subscribing. I do appreciate it. Very kind of you. Unapologetically Seahawks Fan 9, thank you also for subscribing. Flag Zabba says, Will Levis and Nolan Smith in the first next year. Let's do this. Let's do it, Flag. Alexander Wheeler says, take a look at our running backs, by the way. Kurt Warner, first round. Shauna, take a look at all of our great running backs, by the way. Kurt Warner was a first-round player, and by the way, taken, I think, 3rd overall, Alexander, just behind Eric Dickerson. You want to talk about a different age. 2 running backs taken the top 5 picks in the first round. Sean Alexander was a first-rounder. Marshawn Lynch was also a first-rounder. And if we want another great running back, they need to be selected higher than most fans want. Agreed. And I think that the thing that's really closed the case here for me as much as anything is that you're not going to a modernized offense in the NFL being some spread concept offense that wants to throw the football all over the field. You want to run the ball, and you want to run the ball on anybody. And if you're going to accomplish that, I think in looking at the recent data and analyzing the situation for what it is, it does seem like it's telling a pretty stark tale of you better go get a really good running back to make that happen. Trying to make do on a lesser run isn't going to do it. And even in Chris Carson's case, who's been a really good running back for us, part of the reason he drops in that particular draft has to do with the injury situation that had hounded him going back to high school and bore out. Part of the reason you get the clean prospect aspect to Walker is he doesn't have those kind of injury concerns surrounding him. Herbicide says, I think it's funny that Sauce is going to take DJ Reed's position at the Jets. Well, aren't they just both going to start? But they're both just going to be on the outside. Why do I? A biased Hawks fan, but there is an argument to be made. Seattle has a chance at playoffs. The Rooks step up, D improves, and dominate that running game. With all that, average quarterback play could do it. Yeah, folks, be optimistic. We can be realistic and still have a vein of optimism running through us, And I do think this has been a rebuild year in the way that in the way that they've set up these pieces. Part of it was by necessity. You're eating $40 some odd million of dead money on your cap. You have $40 million that are not going to players, over $40 million that are not on your roster. It's hard to compete with that much dead money on the books. But the NFL this year is, in the NFC especially, as someone mentioned above, there are no guarantees. None at all. The Bucs with Brady at 45. Stafford had a multitude of injuries with the Rams last year that he was fighting through and got through it, but he's got an injury history himself, and he's getting older. Aaron Rodgers has gotten torn calves and whatnot and broken collarbones, and he's getting up there now. And once you take out those top three off the board as far as teams go, there's some all right teams in the NFC at that point. But there's certainly, those three are in their own tier, own echelon. And if something happens to knock them back down to the pack, it's a puncher's chance at that point. And they certainly have put themselves in with a nice little punch and they put assets into the defense and they've got the running game. Those are two components that go really well together, along with, as we already know, them having a very great special teams unit overall. You can win football games with those three things coming together. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them being a lot more competitive than we might have thought, especially on the back, by the way, of getting two bookend tackles. I was looking at recent history here as far as tackles go with Abraham Lucas and having the Cross-Lucas combo on both sides. And we haven't had it here really in Seahawks history for a long couple of year period. We might have a great left tackle, but then the right tackle position is like, it's okay. But you look in recent NFL history at some of those teams that have been able to get both in place at the very same time. The Rams with Whitworth and Havenstein. The Saints with Teron Armstead and Ryan Ramczyk. The Buccaneers with Donovan Smith and Tristan Wirfs. The Eagles with Jason Peters and Lane Johnson. The Cowboys with Tyron Smith and La'el Collins. The Ravens with Ronnie Staley and Orlando Brown for a run there. And then you've got Jack Conklin, who's been a great pairing and combo with both Taylor Lewan with the Tennessee Titans and also with the Cleveland Browns and Jedrick Willis, and helping their running game continue to sustain as it has. There's a baseline here. There's a blueprint here towards having a lot of success by putting those tackles in place and not having to necessarily wait for that success, by the way. Those tackles can come in and be all right kind of from the jump. I'm not talking about dominating, but when you look at our offensive line recently, and we've struggled to get to a league average state across the board, and you got guys that arrive in there from the jump, hell yeah, we could be competitive much quicker. Paul Susia, sorry I'm late. Paul, whenever you can come, I appreciate it. No worries, man. David Pugh, thank you for the $10 donation. Very kind of you, David. He says, what is your realistic expectation for the offense and defense in their respective duties? It's a great question. The answer begins with the running game. To me, the running game is going to do more to dictate safeties, an extra safety coming into the box, which is going to simplify the passing game, especially opening up the shorter elements of the passing game, which is then going to make it easier for whatever game manager quarterback we have running the show at that time. And with it, will make the offense reasonably productive from both a time of possession and a scoring standpoint. I would expect us to be a top 15 scoring team, along with being a top 8 time of possession team. And then that drives the success to the defensive side of the ball because the defense is not worn down as it has been in recent years, along with the fact that the Seahawks have built more depth onto the defensive side of the ball in some of their signings and drafting. And that with the changes in the defense, that regardless of whether long-term those changes in the defense breed about success, I think that it's going to breed a level of success instantaneously because the defense has been so ardent in its approach in the past in being uncreative and rigid in its schematics and designs. And you're flipping that on its head this offseason. So every team come game 1 of the NFL season going up against the Seahawks defense is not really going to know what to expect. You're not just getting cover 1, cover 3 stuff anymore. You're going to get more of the cover 2 shell. You're going to get more blitzing. You're going to get more man coverage on the edges. You're going to get a hybridized defense that can flip between 4 and 3-4 looks. I think that there's a level of productivity that defense supplies just on the basis of that alone. Just on that alone. So I look at right on the edges of a top 15 offense. I do look at a defense that can slide into top 10 because of the fact that the offense will be controlling more of the time of possession and the clock. They're not going to probably get much higher than the top 10, and they may be just on the outer edges of it. But overall, you'll have a team that's a little bit better than average in both of those two elements of things, and then you'll have an elite special teams unit. So whatever that might bear out, David, as far as win-loss, we'll see. Probably still put the team, into that 8, maybe 9 win category in a best case, not a best case scenario, but in a likely case scenario. But a best case scenario could easily get up into 11 or 12 wins if you can be dominant in the running game, and you've opened up that's to me the area of getting the playoffs is the running game becomes dominant. The running game becomes, whether it's Penny or Walker, you're busting off chunks of yardage against everybody because you got the guys up front, the hogs up front to get it done. You've got the new schematic designs that are now fully getting the second-year returns of the first-year offensive coordinator coming back now. And so you're getting a lot of that benefits, and this is all beyond what we have running at the quarterback position. So there is an upside. That's the upside to this team to me. That's oh my gosh, you have not a dominant team, but like sub-dominant team because they're doing it just running kind of like the Niners have done recently when they've had good years at the end of the year where they suddenly arrive at and you go, Niners didn't feel super dominant this year aside from maybe on their defensive line, but run the ball consistently, get after the quarterback, stop the run. That can be a formula for success and a lot of wins in this league. Why? Isn't the floor for Woolen? He moves to safety. With that speed, he can just face the line and close on the ball in the air. He's not really the greatest tackler right now. And so I don't know, do you want him as the last line of defense for being your tackler back there? I don't think that's going to work really well. And I don't think he's going to slide to strong safety where you really need that guy to tackle. I think he's kind of a cornerback or bust, to be honest with you. I have heard people talk about him as a safety, but I don't think that I need a little more, and maybe he's going to develop in his game. Like I said, I'll give him room on this because wide receivers play the game differently than corners do, and it is a change of mentality type situation. So I'll give him a little more space to maybe grow in this realm, but not enough for me to say that I think he's got enough there of that dog mentality to be rolling out there at safety. Because even more of the coverage responsibilities of the free safety, you've got to come up from time to time and chop a guy down. Flag Sabbath says, you don't know how other teams are going to value Levis. Oh, you're not talking about me. I think you're talking about somebody else. No, it's no guarantee on him, that's for sure. I think you're talking to somebody else in the chat there. Matt S., how you doing? From a Giants fan? Well, you guys had a great draft, Matt. Hopefully you can get those damn Cowboys out of the top of that division this year. I'm tired of seeing it. I don't want to see it, Jerry. I don't want to hear about it anymore. Look at my draft board. I drafted Micah Parsons, okay? My dumb Good for nothing son, okay? He drafted a guy named Taco Charlton because he was hungry. That's the only reason he did it, didn't you? Didn't you, Steven? Daddy, I'm sorry. How many times I gotta say it? Never enough. Patriot Sports Card says, remember, Tariq Woolen has only played 16 games at the position. Oh, he is. And I'm giving the benefit of the doubt, Patriot, on this. I'm not drawing any conclusions. I'm pushing back. It's just, I've heard people say, I heard, one commenter say, oh, this is the roughest cornerback. This is the roughest cornerback prospect the Seahawks have ever brought in, which I found laughable, by the way, because by far there's been other cornerback prospects rougher than Tariq Woolen, right? There's been other, really, Trey Flowers wasn't in a rougher state as a safety convert coming to this team as far as his technique goes than Tariq, who's at least got 16 games, to your point, played at the position. And yeah, I just think some of that's been an overstatement by some in how they're painting the Tariq pick. And give him some time. So a little bit of the same thing you apply to Boy Mafe. If the guy's just gotten into doing something, just take out the age quotient for a second. If he's just arrived at a given position and just started to learn how to do it, maybe you give him a little bit more than the year and a half, 2 years, whatever, time frame there to say maybe there is a little more upside for him to grow here. Maybe this is not a finished product. And even beyond age, we should never really look at these guys too much as completely finished products anyway coming out of football. Say nothing of a guy that hasn't done it a lot. Paul says this draft must include the 3 players received from Denver. Yeah, that's true. I mean, you could put on top of this draft that we got Noah Fant and Locke and Shelby Harris too. It's a hell of a total haul if you put it all into that bucket of things, Paul, for sure. Cowboys are number 1. Hey, Brandon, great show. OTAs are here. I know, man. We're all, season's coming, folks. Get excited. The season's coming. Hope springs eternal. Cowboys are number 1. So I'm very, very hopeful. Wonder how you think they did on the draft. I'm seeing some Cowboy fans not loving the recent draft. But I love Jerry flashing he flashed the big board at the reporters. Showed all the guys they had second round grades on and stuff. Just epic. Epic Jerry Jones. Bo Mick says, Bo Melton seems like he can be the Seahawks kick returner. He does. I'd be most interested to see if he can get the punt returner duties in on point. We really need some improvement there. Freddie Swain was just not it back there. Not kind of got the fearlessness you need back there. Not enough shake to his game. Mo might be able to give you a little bit of that. Benelli says Woolen had 5 Power 5 offers, so his talent was recognized years ago. Hey, you don't find guys this size moving forward too. You just don't. Along with the explosiveness, along with the length. This is the stuff that, NFL front offices salivate over. TP1 says, is Saquon Barkley the second best back on the Giants? I mean, probably not on a yard per carry basis, but if you're talking about playing and play out. But Barkley's more of your home run hitter type running back, Matt asks, Cowboys are number 1's not big on Dak Prescott. He is definitely fully out on Dak. So he's wheeling and dealing at Dak if he can find a way to make it happen. Sooner7643, thank you for subscribing. Very kind of you to do so. Appreciate you. Why do I? With no expectations, there's no downside for 2022. Most likely we go 7-9 and get picks 10 to 15, or 3 to 5 wins and get a top 5 pick, or God forbid, a playoff spot in the NFC. This is no bad option, really. No bad option. This is the benefit upon the team taking lengths at this point, or taking steps at this point to move this into more of a hopeful state as far as this franchise. I've heard from a lot of different fans out there. I've read it, seen it online, and folks just not being as excited in recent seasons watching this team go out and do what they do because they felt like there was they felt like everything was stuck. Like there was a problem in place that wasn't getting solved. And instead, they were just kind of replaying their same mistakes over and over again. And with it would be the same results. And I think now we have, hope does spring eternal, but now you have them making different moves. I've tried to point in this particular show about how I view this draft in such a different context than recent drafts for the way that they attacked it. I like how the future looks bright towards, not taking a quarterback in this draft, waiting. We didn't even talk about that aspect of it is waiting to go get the right quarterback. They're making smart decisions here now. Things are going in the right direction, and that is encouraging to see. Vank88 says, when are the Browns going to cut Baker Mayfield? I don't know that they're going to cut. If I was the general manager and I'm sitting there, what's the benefit to him at this point? I know that they're riding with 4 quarterbacks on the roster, and that's too many, and they made a mistake with that. But you hold on to him, wait on into training camp, wait into the trade deadline, and see if there's always going to be one contending team that has a quarterback that goes down. And then you go and then clip that team at that time. They'll flip you a 3rd-round pick in desperation. So you cut him now. You're on the hook for $18 million versus you get a team that wants to pounce on him at spring training camp or just inside the trade deadline, and you get a 3rd-round pick. I don't know what would be the draw not to keep him, even if you've got to have one less guy in your roster to do so at that point, because that's going to be a situation that happens. Some injury will occur with some contending team. I don't know. Maybe I'm overstating it, though. Maybe there's no one's going to give him anything for him. HB says, what positions do you think we need some vet depth at? Any possible free agents, training camp cut candidates you like? I haven't, be honest with you, looked very strongly at cut candidates, HB. I would tell you that you're not really as much in past seasons like you would have at the June 1st deadline going to see as many guys cut because of the fact that most of the teams now can kind of they can do the post June 1st designation and do it much further out at this point. It's less needed to have it at June. So I haven't looked too deeply at anybody that's necessarily going to be available. I'm not anticipating there being a lot of names out there. If this team can, if a left guard, obviously left guard would be great if you could find something there. From a depth standpoint, I would say middle linebacker is probably a place that you could stand to probably improve a little bit. But outside of that, you're 2 tackles deep. You got a couple. I mean, center would be great, but you're not going to find better depth than probably what you got now. If you can, that'd be good. But there's not a whole hell of a lot. You're 3 tight ends deep. Your running back room is sealed up now. Receiver would be great, but who are we looking at that point? That's almost kind of what are we talking again for a team that's going to really be running the ball a large amount of time? I'm actually pretty good, HB. Like there's really not a lot else that's going to need to be done at this point. They've kind of taken care of, from a roster building standpoint, what needs to be taken care of. Everybody says, I still want to cut Jackson and get Lewis back to right guard. You're not alone. Lewis needs to go back to right guard. That's his proper place. That's his proper place. Megan says, the Hawks Nest, thank you for making my first draft so enjoyable, even from 11 p.m. Saturday to 7 p.m. Sunday. Well worth getting up early for. Well, thank you, Megan. I appreciate your suggestion on the Largent jersey. It paid off this year. Largent jersey is going to have to be a yearly thing worn now every year, and I don't know if I can wash it. I might just have to sit in my stank every single year as I go through, because that's what's bringing about the best draft results, and this is a scientific process, and I apply it in a scientific way. Mighty Johnny Boy says, what kind of quarterback is CJ Stroud? I haven't done as much look on him yet, Mighty Johnny Boy. Just got through the end of this draft, so I've taken a passing glance at him. He looks like he can make most of the throws in the book. Fairly good footwork, good easy delivery. Maybe not exactly full on size what you're looking for fully on that, but again, I don't want to speak out of school on this. I haven't dived enough in on him. Grandizer says, Bobby McFerrin, don't worry, be happy. Don't worry, be happy. Ooh, 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 ooh. That's that song where he uses no instruments. It's all just him making mouth noises. Hawks fan, I want Damian Lewis back right guard too. It's his proper place. That's his home. Riverside, pissy and cold here in Seattle. Yeah, same over here. It's annoying. TP1 says that both tackles perform in the running game and Walker-Penny combo kills. Pete will be drooling mess on the sidelines all year. He wanted to win with the quarterback throwing the ball 10 times forever. Yeah, he's going to be like, this is Seahawks football. He's going to definitely be up on his horse at that point. Prepare yourself. Fish 2 says CJ Stroud's favorite team is a Seahawks fan. I saw that. Fish, that's kind of cool. And I'm not out on CJ. I haven't watched a ton of his tape. Levis just kind of blew me on when I first kind of flipped on his. Fish says, I also like KJ Jefferson. He reminds me of Cam Newton. Ooh, I got another one to look at then, Fish. All right. Take a look at KJ. Matt S. says, how would you Seahawks fans like Baker Mayfield? I don't think we're really in on it, Matt. There's a lot of things holding this thing up. A lot of things holding it up. First and foremost, you got the $18 million salary. Who's paying that? We're paying that on a one-year deal where he's going to walk for nothing, and then we got to give up draft capital to do it. We're kind of out on that. Plus, Matt Baker's given an interview where he didn't exactly seem all that hyped to be the potential of going to Seattle. And I'll check out Jefferson, Fish, for sure. Benelli says the game in Germany versus Tampa Bay is a bucket list thing for me. While I'm there, a Porsche 911 Turbo on an Autobahn is on my other bucket list while in Germany. That's a good bucket list, man. You better have that Porsche 911 tuned up once you get on that Autobahn. That'd be awesome. But it's cool. Yeah, how about that? The Seahawks are going to be going to Germany this year. We don't lose a home game. Yeah. One less game in Tampa Bay where they put us out in 90-degree weather and make us wear our colored uniforms so that we attract the heat and get that much more hotter as they wear their whites. So we get to avoid that. It'll be kind of cool. I know we got some Germany folks who pop in the chat every once in a while. So hopefully it would be really awesome is if its stadium gets taken over by like Hawk fans. Where you see no orange and white, just it's all blue and green. Herbicide says everybody in the Germany speaks English except the cab drivers. Pissy and cold there too, Megan. Well, I guess it's a worldwide thing today then, huh? TP1 says, I don't think anyone wants Baker in the NFL, players and fans included. Matt asks, as a Giants fan, I would not prefer CJ Stroud because Ohio State quarterbacks don't usually work out. I'd rather have another quarterback. Yeah, you definitely got to have a little bit of mistrust for Ohio State quarterbacks, don't you? Kind of like you would with Baylor wide receivers or, I don't know, Oklahoma defensive linemen. That's probably unfair. That last one's probably unfair. But yeah, Matt, you definitely got to take a little bit of a pause with it at that point. I think what's nice about this year overall, Matt, is it's rather than us as Seahawks fans glom into one quarterback here, we're more looking at it like this last draft didn't have a true first-round ready quarterback, a guy that you want to take as your next guy. So wait a year. Don't go desperate. Don't overreach on a year where you don't need to reach. Go and get the right one at the right time. And next year we're going to have 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks to go find. As I'm sure you would acknowledge, you can that kind of assets, you can kind of go get whichever one you're looking to go get at that point. Grandizer 12 says, hey, Brandon, how you doing today? I'm doing amazing. Amazing. Really like you signed via undrafted free agent Caleb Ellaby, quarterback out of Western Michigan, Joey Hunt, a free safety out of Virginia, and Blunt could be a steal. Hit the like button to show your support. Well, thank you for reminding me of that, Grandizer. Appreciate that. Please do hit that like button if you do like what you're listening to now. You guys were killing it this last week. Part of what helped us grow, gather up about another 300 subs here over the last, week or so nearly. So please do hit that like button. It does help us out. And if you're not subbed, do what Sooner 7643 did. Come on, sub up, come on board. I like those guys, Grandizer. I'm not maybe as hyped on this particular undrafted rookie free agent class as I've been on other ones, but I like individual players from it. Blunt's one of the ones that has me most excited. Interesting to see them hitting the safety position kind of as hard as they did. LB's a functional quarterback over there. I do need to do a little bit of a deeper dive on him. I've tried to watch a bit of tape. I like what I see. I'm not sure I see something that jumps out to me and goes starkly, this guy's he's got it. He's got it. He's good. He's solid on what I see. But he's a flyer guy at that point a little bit too. But I think your mention of Blunt, he's the one that could be a steal for like what you said. He's a hammer. He moves really fast. Still got some good coverage abilities as well. You're talking about a guy that might be a prospect here behind Quandre. And we'll probably push Marquise Blair there as far as that guy to be the first guy off the bench to take that spot over. But Blunt's nice. Blunt's really nice. TP says, I'll take Quan Alexander for cheap plus one more linebacker, and I'll be happy to see our D next year. I'm good with that. Quan would be he's a veteran guy. Wouldn't cost a lot. Brady Warner says, agree. No, yeah, I agree with you too. Jones isn't bad at all. Has shown moments of good. Matt S. says, I feel like DJ isn't terrible as people claim, but at the same time, he isn't good enough to get paid $40 million yearly. He also gets injured way too much. DJ? Daniel Jones. It's also part of the problem, isn't it, Matt, where you go and you get a quarterback before you get your offensive line. Because now you're in the state where you're at right now a little bit, where you're trying to make an assessment here of this quarterback that you drafted in the top 10 and whether or not you want to keep riding with him. And you go, yeah, but we haven't quite given him the offensive line to let him really try to flourish and take off. And that's another problem, along with a lot of other problems as far as getting the cart before the horse as a franchise. And one reason, Matt, with my particular team here this offseason, I've been saying, don't take this path. Don't get Malik Willis at number 9 in this draft, put him behind this offensive line and have him get killed and learn nothing. And then you end up 3 years down the road with a guy who's been highly inconsistent, who you now have to make a determination on his future that revolves around you giving him, as you say, $40 million plus a year. It makes that decision a lot harder, as opposed to if you know he can operate behind, whether or not he can operate behind a great offensive line with good skill position players on the outside. TB says, Darrell Taylor, Mafe, Shelby Harris, the dude from the Chargers, Owusu. I can never pronounce his name right. I think our pass rush is going to be different next year. It's got a lot of potential. I like that they got good rotational guys going through there. You also got still brought back Woods, Jefferson. Puna's still in the mix on that. Not a lot of weak links in there, I'll say that. Dylan Dang says, trade our 2 first next year for a top 3 pick. That's it, Dylan. That's if you're looking about targeting the quarterback next year. I think there's going to be probably 4 to 5 quarterbacks in next year's first round taken. Would it be great to get the top guy on the board? Sure, it'd be great to get the top guy on the board. If you can't, you have the ammunition to move up in the draft and probably get number 2 or number 3 if that's what you want to do. Probably. Herbicide says the Chargers love DeChuna. I'm excited to see what he can do. Me too. Kevin Lonice. Kevin, I better learn how to pronounce your last name here. Lonice. I'll go Kevin. Kevin says, I never lost faith in John. I believe Pete had the power in the past, and now we actually have a general manager now. Very well said, Kevin. Very well said. I've had some folks, I had a guy in the comment section, how do you know this year was different? And it just did feel different. It felt different in the way the draft went. It felt different in when you watch the press conferences. There was a feeling of like, especially that day 3 press conference, like John just had this big boss energy kind of going for him. And Pete just sort of had this, sort of like the roles had changed, it felt like. And again, I don't know for sure. I mean, I'm yapping over here sometimes, but it did feel like that watching that press conference, like there was an energy at play of John being, I'm running this ship. I'm guiding this thing now. He's coaching it. And maybe I'm just reading into the tea leaves a little too deeply here, Kevin, but it did feel that way to me this year. And one of the reasons why I said is we've definitely been bringing out the chopping block for Carroll and Schneider recently. But one of the things I have said in the past is it's hard to make the assessment of Schneider if Carroll has truly been wielding that power in the background as far as personnel decisions go, not just wielding the power on the field as a coach. Because then John at that time has had decisions taken out of his hands. We don't know. Nobody's able to report on any of this information, I guess. Nobody's ever able to get any access to this information. Maybe perhaps if some of the local reporters on the scene were to dive into this very topic, it might be an interesting one to cover. I don't know if you happen to maybe want to do your job at some point. But we don't know. So we're left to guess. It did feel different this year to me, though, Kevin. I watch this stuff different. I watch this stuff deeply. I look into it deeply. I study it deeply. This year felt differently. Matt, Charles Cross is a great pick. It was a great pick. Daniel says, don't know if you're a soccer fan as well, but Sounders won the CONCACAF Championship Finals last night, the first U.S. team to win the international tournament. Let's go, Seattle. Hey, let's go, Daniel. Let's go, Sounders. I'm not a big soccer fan, but I support my local teams. And boy, between the Storm and the Sounders, we might end up talking about them as the most successful franchises in Seattle history here pretty soon. But good for the Sounders. Go Sounders. Grandizer 12, I thought Seattle needed an inside linebacker more than a running back if Penny was not re-signed. I can kind of see it. Still, inside linebacker seems like a much dire need. Well, I mean, you've got Jordan Brooks you just selected in the first round a couple of years ago, Grandizer. You also have third-round pick Cody Barton that you just selected a couple of years ago. As I said, I think that the success of this team, and we talk about what would be a pathway for this team not to be in a complete rebuilding season next year, where they're 5-12 or whatever, that they're actually pushing for the playoffs. It begins, if you're going to accomplish that, and then frankly, it begins going even into 2023. It doesn't matter where we're talking about this being next year or the year after. Irrelevant. You apply both to here. With the coach you have running this ship, with the way that he wants to win football games, you need to first and foremost run the football. Not stop the run, which is what you're predominantly going to ask of your inside linebacker, not stop the run. You need to run the ball first. And it's not that stopping the run isn't important, but that where this team sort of begins in its philosophy is going to begin with that. So that does drive a little more of the importance and need towards the running back position. I might offer that it's as well a little bit easier to find an inside linebacker that can be a hammer in the run game out on the streets at a given point than it is to find the equivalent at the running back position. They're both somewhat, I would say, devalued anyway in the NFL. MJ says, very cool about the Sounders. Hope some of that will rub off on our Hawks. Yeah, me too. Me too. Brian Myers says, do folks realize the same offensive line coach on Leach's staff worked with Cross at MSU and Lucas at WSU? Says both will be starters quickly, and the knock on Cross about running blocking is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. I've seen a couple of narratives drive out of this draft, and it's people. I wish people at times would look a little bit deeper into situations as opposed to just trying to say he's in a spread formation, so he doesn't know how to run block. Like, really? That just means you can't run block if you're in a spread concept formation. Well, he's not. They didn't do it. Well, they didn't do it at a high rate, but they did do some of that. It wasn't like it wasn't in his game at all. I never understood that, but that's a great little tidbit there, Brian. And I'm not shocked to hear the coach say that because it backs up what you see on both of these two guys' tape, which is that they're both, in my opinion, fairly pro-ready. They're going to me, go starters day one on both of these two guys. Just good talents, great players. They got it all. Got everything you need: movement, length, size. They can root down, enough functional strength. Just go down the line, go down the list of things that you want from an offensive tackle, and these guys bring it. TP1 says, everyone seems to talk S on Adams because we gave up a ton to get him, but he didn't have a defensive coordinator to utilize his strengths. I think our D could be a top 5 next year if Bryant or T. Brown can get cornerback locked. Well said, TP. Well said. And yeah, it's a lot you give up for Adams, no doubt about it. And I think people are definitely on solid ground by saying you shouldn't have given up that amount of value, that amount of draft capital for Jamal. How about us, by the way, getting back a 4th-round pick we never talk about for Jamal Adams' deal? We always talk about the 2 first-rounders and the 3rd we gave up. We forgot about the 4th-rounder we got this year in this draft, which became Kobe Bryant. So it'll be interesting to see how this trade in totality plays out with the full value measured out across the line. With me, TP, I think it's a great step that they're finally, with this defense, moving it in a direction that's going to better take advantage of Adams' strengths. Clint Hurt, in his press conference after he was announced the defensive coordinator for the Seahawks, said that it's our job to better utilize him and put him in more positions to succeed versus the cover 1 and cover 2 responsibilities you were predominantly asking him to undertake here over the last couple of years. So I do expect him to play better. With him, it's about those shoulders, though, man. What about the groin? What about the fingers? Is his body okay? Is he able to sustain for a full NFL season at this point, or is it starting to break down? That's more of the biggest question at play here. We've taken care of this, putting him in the schematic right positions. Now the body's got to hold up and get it done. Brian Meyer says, be sure to look at the tape for Devin Leary out of North Carolina State. I will for sure, man. For sure. Benelli says, Levis is not a poor man's anything. He can dominate the league, and I'll be front row. Well said. I just try to fight not overstating things because I can sometimes get into too I might have a time to get too hyped on a given guy. But I love him, man. And you're right. He sits second to nobody. He is an absolute stud from a talent standpoint. Alejandro Verduzosco. He says, I'm pumped for the future of this young team. Me too, Alejandro. It's so excited to be excited again. You know, it's so exciting not to be turning over something that's just the same thing being turned over from one end to the other, and there's no change. We have change. We have a breath of fresh air. TB says, I had never heard of Levis, but he looks good. Surprised no one spent a 7th on him. I know he's super small, but so was Russ. Oh, you're talking about the other Levis, Louis. Even though Russ had a larger frame. Yeah, the small frame guys, if they're not also got a little bit of thickly build to them, are going to get a little bit of a knock in that realm of things to a degree. But, you know, the NFL teams this year, TP, we just weren't very high on the quarterbacks in this draft. There's no other way to say it. They just were not big on these guys. Amari Taylor says, what quarterback do you want the Seahawks to draft next year? Well, it's early on, Amari, and I've got to get through about probably 6 or 7 quarterback prospects that I've got to evaluate through to come to a determination on that. The early front runner by a bit of a wide margins, Will Levis. TP1 says, oops, you meant Will Levis. I was talking Levi Levis. It took me a second on that one, TP, but I got you saying on that. Yeah. He's okay too, man. He's he's got left-handed Kyler Murray is a little bit of the comparison I've seen on him. I mean, that's probably about right. If he can be really sensational in that role, if he's just that kind of little bit of a one-trick kind of sit back, one read, and then I'm going to go run. I've always said if you're going to have a guy coming off the bench rather than finding the guy that's like your starting quarterback who's throwing bullets all around and read the defense and doing everything you need a starter to do, get the guy that can run more of a simplified game plan for a couple of games, especially the guys that are mobile. Have him run the Lamar Jackson 3 or 4 games as your guy is out kind of role before you can get your guy back. It's not the worst way to go. It's not horrible. We'll see what he's got. Herbert says, sorry about the Cam Hayward comment for next year's draft. I was wondering what you were saying with the Cam Hayward. I was like, Cam Hayward, Ironhead Hayward? Ironhead at quarterback? From the grave? His name is Cameron Ward, Washington State quarterback. He is the one that we are projected to take at quarterback next year. I'll take a look at him, man. I'll take a peek at him. It's going to take me some time to get through all of them, but I will get through some of them here. Mark Coppercorn, what's up, Mark? He says, with a big offensive line like we have, even an average quarterback can make it to the playoffs. Last year's team were not great. Last year's team were not great quarterback, but still won. Hit the like and sub button for this hard-working man. Well, thank you, Mark. And yeah, it's well said. It's one of the reasons that I have beat this drum for a while now, which is to say, it doesn't matter whether Russell Wilson is here. It doesn't matter what your future is going to be. It doesn't matter whether you're in a rebuild. It doesn't matter whether you're looking to compete right now or 2 years from now. Build a dominant offensive line. The returns on it and what it gives back to you, the fruits that it bears out are to me, better than any other position outside of maybe quarterback as far as investment versus return. And I like to see now that the team, Mark, is starting to take this trek. And if you do take this trek, not only does it make everybody's job a little bit easier across the offensive board, but you also open the door up to being able to win that many more games, because so many teams around the league still don't understand the value of the offensive line, still are gravitating towards those flashier positions on the football field. But as I say, it's a cliche for a reason. You win the game in the trenches. You really do. It still is a game won there. Brian Meyer says Rattler's been a head case from day one. Wouldn't be surprised to see him transfer again. Boy, he's got some, there's some one tape I saw of him like as a 16, 17-year-old kid where he was screaming on the tape. Like it was just everything that you would like not want from like a kid that young that's got his head overblown and he's been told he's the greatest thing since sliced bread since he was 12. And he's like given that Williams kid, because they were both at Oklahoma at the time, and he's just giving him a ton of stuff. It's before they went to Oklahoma. Like they were just at a high school, all 16, all 180, whatever they call those camps. But boy, I did not get a good beat off of Rattler from that tape. I was like, boy, this kid seems douchey. He just seemed kind of little bit, but he's young. Who knows? Michael Corhorse, what number does Kenny Skywalker wear? Number one, Skywalker needs to be his nickname. What's a good number, folks? What's a good number for him? 21? Doesn't 21 seem about right on Kenny? I think that'd look pretty tight. 21 would be my pick. Michael Crowhorse Chavez, Pete Carroll's contract's up in 2025. That is correct. Why says experts saying that offensive tackles drafted can't run block. In fact, they did great run blocking, just weren't asked to do it much. Both had an 85 plus PFF run blocking grade. Wow, you guys are bringing some great stats today to the show. I love it, man. This is just the kind of data I eat up. And yes, again, Pro Football Focus analytics do look towards college, do analyze the college game, do look at every individual play of every individual player like this that is of note, and that they did have both of these two tackles that we took in this last first round with an 85 plus grade. And again, to give you guys a base metric, as I say, like about 65, if you're on a pro level looking at a player, that's across the board, that's about average for whatever position and player you're looking at as far as their given rating for a game or for a season. So when you have guys at an 85 plus PFF run blocking grade, 20 points higher than where I told you average would be at in the college level, is this a player then that you would derive and say, I would take from that information then that he's not a good run blocker? No, you wouldn't, would you? You might say there's some sample size here because he doesn't do it as much as some other guys in the sport, but nonetheless, you would still say, no, he was dominant in that element when asked to do it at the college level. Just wasn't asked to do it very often. Herbicide says, Cross is filthy. I was watching his highlights last night. He's a bad boy, that's for sure. Back in KD8, are all these players human if we gather that they are, and let's go ahead and say they are all inconsistent? Are all these players human if we gather that they are, and let's go ahead and say they're all consistent? Yeah. I don't know what you mean by that, Bank. I'm sorry. I don't quite understand on that one. Seahawks Jose Rodriguez says, was watching the Seahawks video with Waldron talking about Locke. God help us. Terrence Barbie, we're just a quarterback away after next year's draft. That's right, Terrence. That's right. We'll have all the pieces in place, which again, that because you set the stage in this way, will help for potentially more earlier quarterback success and less of having to wait for that guy to get all the way through his development, which again, just opens that door that much wider to getting to the Super Bowl that much faster, or to get back to being an elite team that much faster. UE2K says, we need an elite quarterback if the goal is to win the Super Bowl. Last non-elite quarterback to win the Super Bowl was Flacco. Recent trend is an elite quarterback is needed to win it all. Yeah, I mean, you definitely need to, I can buy into that. I'm going through my mind here, trying to go through and remember everything with this. some of that is too, you got Tom Brady in there every other year, one way or another, which is going to skew this a little bit, but yeah, it's true. Bucks Skull Gang in the house. What's up, my guy? Says, hi, Hawks Nest. Are you ready? Bucks Seahawks, November 13th, 9:30 a.m. game. I'm ready, Bucks. I'm not going to be awake. I'm going to be like half awake when I go live, but I'm ready. I'm ready. We're ready for you Bucks to bring that noise. You do not have permission to board our ship, okay? You do not have permission to board, and you can put as many knives in your mouth as you want, okay? You can put as many of any of those little like where they got those things smoking out of your hair, right? Do all that. Yeah, okay, you got your parrot. Whoop-de-doo, okay? Okay, we get it. We get it. You do not have permission to board. And yeah, we're locked in. We're ready for you. You're not ready for us. You guys are going to come in. You're going to take us. You're going to take us for granted. You're going to be like, oh, no Russ is here. Oh, they're in a rebuilding phase. Brady's going to go hit the Germany red light district. You know he is. You know he is. You know he is. And be like, Tom, why didn't you play good? He's like, I don't know. The red light was just too good. What'd you say, Tom? I was making throws and just, they just weren't accurate today, I guess. I don't know why I was miss-shooting. I guess I was busy shooting other shots. Oh! Needless to say, Bucks, I'm ready. Yeah, in time. We're going to take you to the woodshed, yeah? We're going to take you to the woodshed, good? Yeah? Nine. Ryan Austin says, how about them Sounders? How about them Sounders? How about them champions? Still nothing like the 12s, though. Go Hawks. Still nothing like the 12s for me either, Ryan. Maybe I'll get onto soccer eventually, but congrats, Sounders. Very much congrats. The Clapper Baker has already had 2 great running backs at his disposal with Landry and OBJ, not to mention a pretty solid defense. If he couldn't do it in Cleveland, he definitely can't do it in Seattle. Very well said, Clapper. It sits at one of my, I never have one reason for not wanting to do something or wanting to do something. There's usually a couple reasons I stack up. The cost of Baker's lukewarm at best attitude towards the thought process of coming to Seattle, and then also the fact that when he was healthy, I'm not talking about necessarily this last season, but even the year before, when he had, to your point, 2 great running backs at his disposal, good receivers, good tight ends at his disposal, and one of the best offensive lines in the sport, top 3 easily. And he was still only marginally better than average, just a little bit better than average. Well, that's not going to get me excited enough on a 1-year rental to bring that guy in or to think he's going to have that much more substantial impact. And I understand that Baker's got the first-round pedigree, but remove that for a second, seeing what he had to work with there with Cleveland, seeing some of the limited returns off what you might expect versus other quarterbacks, it does sour me down just a little bit on him potentially. Whitey Wise says, let's think about this. Let's say Seattle signs Baker as a free agent for cheap. For him to do well enough to extend would mean he will cost high money. Why risk money on a 1 year of production with those quarterbacks in 2023? I don't know. And I'm going to keep banging the drum that it's not the smart way to go here. Seahawks don't win this year anyway. No, they're not going to deliberately try to lose, but they know Geno and Locke are not the difference makers. It's true. Old Town Scouts, what's your favorite pick of the bunch? I'm excited for Bo Melton. To get Abraham Lucas in the 3rd round was just insane value to me, and he's a perfect scheme fit for what we want to do. I keep coming back to that. Might be my favorite. That's probably my favorite pick of the draft, Old Town Scouts. He's a guy to me that's the rarity of high floor, high ceiling. And it wasn't as easy as the Cross pick to necessarily get. You had to sort of sit and wait on that one to jump on it at just the right time. But he's the guy that I think I had a late first round grade on him. I watched a lot of his tape. I did a whole 30-minute breakdown on my Seahawks scouting channel on Abraham Lucas 3 months ago. I'd watched a lot of this guy's tape. And he's just clean. He's ready. He's got upside. You don't find these kind of components usually within a tackle prospect in a draft, say nothing of getting him in the third round. What are my thoughts on the Bucs game? What are my thoughts on the game on November 3rd, Bucs, Skull? Well, some of this is going to depend. I think, in the past, Tom Brady I think he's played the Seahawks a couple of times. He's lost a couple of times. He's obviously beat us in the Super Bowl when our Legion of Boom was beat down. I think Carroll understands relatively well, if he's got a healthy crew on the back end, of how to defend against Tom with the short passing attack. And certainly we're going to take away the run game and force Tom to just beat us with his arm throughout the course of the game. So if I look to given history within that, Carroll seems to do fairly well overall against Brady and how he understands how to game plan and shut down what he wants to shut down. I also think we're going to give Brady some fits with being a little bit more multiple and not as easy necessarily to read in what we're doing, playing and play out, because we can flip from 4-3 to a 3-4, and I think we got personnel that can kind of align in different positions at times to confuse things. We'll see if they actually implement it. Some of this Bucs is we're putting this new defense in and we haven't seen it yet, so I'm making a guess here. And then probably a lot of the key on that game is going to come down to how your dogs up front and your front seven stop the run, which the Bucs do a very good job of. Can we create holes up against that front seven, or are you going to shut it down, force us to pass, and then you're probably winning that game? But if we're able to both keep you from turning us one-dimensional and turn you one-dimensional to Brady will have his yards. He'll probably throw for 300 plus, but it will be like the 2012 game in Seattle where Brady went out and he put up a ton of yards on that Legion of Boom defense. But the Legion of Boom defense also got a couple interceptions over the course of that game. There was a price for doing business as it concerned Brady in that particular affair, and I would expect the same here. But we got to get closer too. We got to see also Bucs, Skull, where the teams are at from a health standpoint, and then also what this defense is truly doing to take steps forward to change. And I do agree with Dewey on this one with his point on the prime, because you can bring up the Nick Foles is not a prime quarterback, but we also have to acknowledge Nick Foles was playing at a superhuman level. I mean, he was the equivalent of a guy playing in the zone at the time that he won the Super Bowl. It's hard to just say, well, it ain't Nick Foles. To call it just Nick Foles, that's not quite encapsulating everything that he was at that time for the Eagles on that run. So that was elite quarterback play at that time. Michael Ponikowski says the Bucs Seahawks game in Germany is going to be 6:30 a.m. in Washington. Oh my God, it's that early? Oh dear Lord. Y'all better be up with me. I'm gonna be streaming that early I might just start streaming at 5:30. Just, you guys get up. If I was streaming that day, y'all better be riding with me on that. That's early. Oh Lord, that's early. Joseph Miley, do you think our linebackers are our weakest point? Make me feel better about the linebackers. Are they our weakest point? Probably hard not to make you feel bad about them not being the weakest point, because they probably are the weakest point. I mean, you've stacked money and talent at safety. You have added 2 corners deep on this draft on top of Burns and Sidney Jones you brought back with Trey Brown. You've now added to the offensive line. Yeah, it's probably it, Joseph. The place I'd make you feel most better, I guess, is that if you're going to be running out 3-4 defense 60 to 70% of the time, which I'm kind of somewhat anticipating, then the most important part of that 3-4 defense as far as the linebacker is concerned is the outside guys. And so having Taylor, Uchenna, Boy Mafe, I think even Alton Robinson can do some of that on another side. That does help you over there where you feel good about that. Now the inside, Barton, Brooks, BBK, it's definitely a question mark. But it's not insane. There's been a lot of 3-4 teams in recent years, Joseph, that have gone really light in the interior. Green Bay has done this a lot, where they've put almost at times no assets into the middle, and tried to keep everything else on the outside. This burned their butts at times to the point that they had to move Clay Matthews from the outside to the inside when he was still a very good pass rusher. But it seems to be a place you can overcome a little bit more in a 3-4 defense first, maybe needing that inside guy in the 4-3 pure. But Brooks will be fine at least. He should be good. He'll be a good fit there. You certainly, though, from a depth standpoint, have some concerns. Kelvin says, recent history of big-name quarterbacks leaving teams. The team suffers and the quarterback thrives. Hawks have an uphill battle. They do. They do. I think some of it's a little different here, Keldon, to a degree, in that I think some of it's a little bit different to a degree here. Just a bit. Because we look at the situation, so you go, okay, San Diego Chargers had Phillip Rivers leave, and then they got Justin Herbert in there. Did they suffer? Maybe. You go, Brady goes to the Bucs from the Patriots, but at that time, you had really built everything up there to Brady and his skill set. But that would be a valid one. I'm just trying to think about the other ones where we got guys leaving. I mean, Montana left the Niners, and the Niners were still okay. They had Young in place back in the day. I'm just trying to go through the different examples in my mind here, though. When Favre left, they still had Rodgers there. I mean, I don't know. Brady certainly is a shining example of this, I guess, a little bit. But even that one, it's like the Patriots were back last year to getting towards the playoffs. So they had to wait a year after Brady moved on. So even that one is I don't know. We'll see. We'll see on that one. Seahawks Jose Rodriguez, if by miracle we start 5-1 with the defense carrying us, do you trade for a quarterback then, hypothetically speaking? I guess, Jose, for me, it's dependent upon the quarterback we're talking. And if it's the Baker Mayfield trade, I don't think that I would. The one thing about trading for a quarterback first, let's say Jose trading for a running back, is that you're not just bringing a plug-and-play guy in who instantly just go hit that hole and hit it with ferocity. You need a quarterback who has understanding of not only the playbook and the routes you run, particularly in your rate, how you run them, the route adjustments you need to make on the fly, the protections, how each of your receivers run their routes, the timing of those running of those routes, to try to speed all that up into being a competitive team that's really pushing to be elite is probably a bridge too far at that point for us. So I just don't think it would be, though you might be getting a more talented quarterback at that point by bringing him and having him be that guy, I don't think you'll get much of the returns of it because of those things being missing in doing that. But it also sort of does depend, Jose, on who we're talking. If we're talking about a really epically good quarterback, maybe that opens a little more of the potential of that door being possible. So it does rely upon specifics there a little bit. Jeffrey Donhauser says, the Hawks Nest, do you think Penny will start at running back next year? I do, Jeff. I do indeed. I've got him on a 1-year deal. They're giving him $6 million. I think that they intend to ride him out there on 200 and 250 carries. And I think he will do very good with that, Jeff, if he can stay healthy. I don't think it's as big a question mark of him being able to stay healthy as some people might think, but that's going to be the reliant point. If he's on the field, though, expect him to be absolutely not insanely productive, but upper level productive minimum, because that's what he's been every time he has been on a football field. But yeah, he'll be number one. Walker will have the number one state a year from now, but they'll bring the kid along a little slowly, I bet. Brian Myers says, strong need for a strong nose tackle for the new defense to be a top 10. That is one big place that is a glaring missing spot of this defense as it stands right now, is you don't really have a nose tackle that you'd like. I think Al Woods can do some of it, but I just think Al Woods is also going to be limited in the number of snaps he can play in doing that role. I don't think Brian Monet's just got enough to his game to pull that off. So if you're talking about, maybe a position that might be worth us taking a look at via a trade, this might be one you take a look around at. Brandon, have you seen DK's past 2 interviews talking about his diet? His diet doesn't fit his physique. Makes me wonder if he's using PEDs. What are your thoughts on his diet? Ironic, both DK and AJ are jacked. I mean, I'm always hesitant to start to prescribe something else to somebody as far as being jacked up. Because look, I mean, if you're being jacked, the thing with steroids and stuff is it's recovery time stuff. It's going to help make you stronger, but you still need to put the protein in your body to build the muscle. So I don't think that, you're just going to be able to eat candy and jack steroids into your ass and you're going to look like a superhuman physique like he is. There are people that genetically are predisposed to be able to have that kind of body, and he does come from an athletic pedigree as far as his father and uncle having played the sport. There's maybe some naturally athletic freakishness or naturally metabolistic freakishness to it. I also think, Corey, that if you saw the diets of some of these players in not just in football, but in some of these other sports where you think that they have got everything refined down to a fine-tuned engine, you would be blown away. I had a talk with a guy that I happened to cross paths with this past year who was a cook for an NBA team. And he was talking about how different teams have different foods, and some teams pay really close attention to the nutrition element and getting really good food for their players, and other teams have their players eating absolute crap. And so it's just not as much as you might think of there being everybody just doing what they're supposed to do. Yeah, DK's diet's concerning for me. He's eating candy all day, and the one meal thing makes a little sense to me, Corey, because that's kind of part of that ketonic diet, ketonic diet, whatever it's called, where you're limiting the amount of time during the day you're eating. And if DK is only eating the candy and the food in like the 5-6 hour time frame, that is part of the ketonic process to where you're allowing your body to get back into that other state where it's really burning through any kind of fat and whatnot. But could be eating the candy too. There's a lot of fat, not just a lot of sugar. So he's not technically eating a lot of fat, which would keep him slim too. But I heard about it, but I've also heard about some of the diets of these other players, so I'm not, it doesn't freak me out. I can't believe how they eat, but good luck changing it. UEGK says Seahawks might have a moderate success this year because they're playing a fourth place schedule. Games versus the Lions, Panthers, Giants, all hell. Something I would mention, Keldon, you mentioned up there that we struggle. It's part you got to keep into mind with this also, though, too, is to UE2K's point on this. You do have that last place schedule, and the last place schedule now means more than it ever has because of the fact that you have the extra game in an given NFL season. So you used to have only 2 of those separate games that would be determined on whether they were easy or they were hard on what your schedule was the previous year. That was really it. All the rest of the games were locked in on who you were going to play. Now you have 3. And so it does change the lane when you consider those 3 teams are, to your point on that, UE, Lions, Panthers, and Giants. Those should be in themselves an easy 3 wins. That should be a 3 wins right there off the top before we even break out a sweat. Doesn't guarantee we get in the playoffs, and to Ewe's point, it does allow more of a moderate, easier pathway to a potential success for next year if that is accomplishable. Alexander says, I'm just holding on to hope that Penny's injuries were mostly just related to the ACL, and he's back to being a healthy player. He's such a good person, and he deserves better than what he's experienced. I agree with you, Alexander. I agree. You hear nothing about him off the field. You hear nothing about him not being a hard worker. I think he came in, especially last year, down to like 225 in the camp, really understanding what was at play, understanding what he needed to do. And I do think that those injuries were related back to his ACL through the early part of last year. But if he can tap into what he was at the end of last season, even into 95% of that, he is one of the best backs in the league. Corey Pitts, also initially I thought the Cards paid too much for Hollywood Brown, but they only gave up a 25th pick overall and received a 3rd rounder. Plus they knew before we did, D-Hop was going to be suspended. Yeah, it's a mid third rounder they got back, Corey. So it wasn't a high third rounder. It was a mid third rounder they got back. To me, it was still a little bit too much value for Hollywood Brown, a guy that's had some injury history, a guy with some drops issues with the Ravens. It's also not the best if you're making a trade and you're having to make trades based on your players being suspended. You certainly aren't operating from a very solid ground there front office wise if that's what's causing you to make those kind of moves. But they felt they needed to do it. The thing I don't like about it as well, Corey, is that they continue to keep stacking up a wide receiver core over and over again and ignoring other parts of their team to do so. And I just think that that's, there's a little bit of a diminishing returns element on it when you keep putting this much into it. And so that's the part that I don't like about that deal necessarily in total. It's not a complete miss. It's not a complete, I hate it, but wasn't a fan of this draft for the Cardinals and just not the biggest of fans in regards to that trade. Brian Myers says, how did everybody's mock drafts turn out? My mock did okay. I got 26 of the 32 players taken in the first round. I think I got like the first 4 or 5 right. Something like that. Keldon says, I believe the Niners will now have the quarterback advantage. It could play out differently, but I believe. I understand why you believe, Keldon. I know why you believe. Hopefully Trey Lance's. I read a report today that the Niners are underwhelmed by Lance's progression. So I don't know. We'll see on that one. Donuts, did we ever get a different kicker? We didn't. We are still sitting with Jason Miggity Myers. Still Mr. Myers. Ryan Wilson, Locksness, if you looked at 2023 quarterbacks, other than Young or Stroud, perhaps Will Levis of Kentucky or Tyler Van Dyke of Miami. Ryan, I have looked at 3 of those 4 guys a little bit. I need to do more of a deeper dive, which is now going to start to commence here as we move past the draft here into this off season. Will Levis for me is my quarterback 1 at the moment. I do need to look at Van Dyke, though. He's started to emerge. Him and Richardson are going to be my next 2 quarterbacks I take a peek at. But what's good here, Ryan, is that there's a lot of talented guys, it sounds like, coming out this next year. Keldon says, I don't remember such a big deal being made of Patrick Mahomes sitting. Suddenly the sky is falling on Lance. And I'm not there yet, Keldon. I'm not adjusting my thing on it. That was a report I read today. So I don't, as far as that the Niners, maybe it was just leaked. Who knows where it's being leaked? Maybe it's just being created out of nothing. But the jury's still out on Lance. We don't know what he's going to be yet. We got to see more of him on the field first. Paul Taylor says, as a Pats fan, I really think you guys need to find a way to get Jimmy G. I could see him doing well in Seattle. Well, the question always comes down to this, Paul, is if you bring in Jimmy G into Seattle. First off, Paul, let's acknowledge this. You're really not going to see interdivision teams trading between each other. It's not something you're going to tend to see, especially in the Niners case where they're going to help a division rival out at the quarterback position. So very highly unlikely the Niners would move him to us, even if we offered more value than another team out there. The other part is that the thing that I was telling you could apply to Baker Mayfield, which is, yes, Baker Mayfield is better than Drew Lock and Geno Smith. Probably only marginally so there. And in Jimmy G's case, probably only marginally so. How much better next year? We're not talking about multiple years, or neither of these 2 guys in Jimmy or Baker's case is going to be the quarterback of the future. So the question is, how much better is either of those 2 guys going to make the NFL team next year? The answer is not very much. So also not very worth going after. Truffle says, what do you think of the Mariners on the road? They've looked horrible the past couple of games. It's definitely, they've hit a rough patch after starting off really hot. This is what's a little bit tough in baseball, is that it's such a marathon that goes with ebbs and flows and ups and downs. Not surprised to see the inconsistency. That's what you get with a young team, Truffles, in baseball. And when a team is as young as this team is, that's what you're especially going to get. So they're finding their way. They're learning their ropes. I think the team's going to be better at the end of the year than they're going to be earlier on. There will be help coming on the way if the team can stay just competitive. So just keep your head just a little bit above 500 through the course of the early part of this year. And eventually they can make a trade deadline deal. You got Lewis coming back off the DL. More can come around to helping the team out and engage you down the line, along with hopefully the developmental that'll finally kick in. Kelenic gets closer to those 500 at bats and he can finally start to maybe get himself above the Mendoza line and hit a little bit more consistently. King Henry says, do you wish the Seahawks would have grabbed a quarterback? If so, which one? No, I don't, King Henry. I'm a believer in the fact that teams get this wrong constantly in the NFL, and the teams that get this right really get the benefits of it. Get your offensive line in place first before you go get your quarterback. And if you go get your quarterback before your offensive line, you're going to get him beat to hell. He's going to develop bad habits, and then you're not really going to be able to make an assessment on him of when you need to pay him, of whether he's good or not. And so I would not have done that in this draft, King Henry, most especially because there was not a quarterback in this draft that was really deserving of being picked in the first 2 rounds. You were stretching. You were moving around. You were cooking the books on your quarterback evaluations to pump one of these guys up into the first or second round. So why go for a skilled, efficient quarterback when your team's not ready for it, when your offensive line's not ready for it? Wait a year, get that stuff right, and then address it. Ryan Wilson says, Levis has a good feel in the pocket while keeping his eyes downfield. He really does. He's fearless in the pocket. He's got good, subtle movement within that pocket. So it doesn't require him to always bail on the pocket and go run around in circles and pirouettes. Sometimes it's him taking 3 steps to his right, take a step forward, move back, or turn sideways just a little bit to let the rusher slide past him, then move back in and keep his eyes up the field the whole time. He does a great job of it. He's got a quick release too, which allows him to throw the ball late in the pocket, late in the process of the play. As somebody else said, he throws with accuracy and anticipation on top of that, which you put those all together, and this is why we start to get really excited by this kid's skill set. Keldon says, I'll say this as a Niner fan, I would much rather have the Hawks get Baker than Jimmy. Man, neither really does much to move the needle for me. Megan says, my large jersey will be washed by hand today and hung with care. Not to be worn unless in extreme emergency, but it will be coming to Seattle with me. It's good to hear, Megan. It's very good to hear. Brian says, the Hawks Nest, do we need a Seattle area bar game watch get together next season? I think we probably should try to, Brian. I gotta see if I can find a bar where I can live stream in maybe, so we can do a live stream as we're going through and doing it on. But I definitely want to get over there next year. At some point, maybe do a game, do a meet and greet thing or whatever. We got to get the whole Hawks Nest crew in at some point or another. So I'm turning it over in my mind, but I'd like to put something together. Nolan Arbanz, I thought we covered that it was my lucky Brandon Browner jersey. Well, it's hard to say, Nolan. It's an either or, Largen's greatness or Brandon. I mean, it's, we're splitting hairs. Charles Riley with a $5 donation. Thank you so much, Charles, and it's great to see you in the chat. He says, you can become a Hawks Nest member for a nominal monthly fee, folks. Since I did, I've lost 20 pounds and have increased my vitality. Thanks, Brando. Hey, I'm here to help, Charles. Don't forget about the 1/4 of an inch that I helped you on that ad, too. Appreciate you, brother. Very kind, very kind. Richard Hillman says, the Hawks Nest, your voice is back, man. Great to see you. I think the draft took a toll on your cat. Yeah, I think it did. Well, she was busy trying to engage the luck status on everything. You know what I mean? So we were calling upon her to use the psychic cat abilities because we know the cats dance between 2 worlds. And she's able to navigate the astral plane and get into Schneider and Carroll's ear during the draft picks to make sure they were drafting the right ones. And so it took one of her 9 lives of her cat, one of the 9 lives cats have. But you can see she was willing to make that sacrifice, and now she's in a recovery mode. Look at that face. That's a recovery face right there. She's a good girl, though. She let me give my draft decision. I had a fun time, and yeah, I lost that 3rd day. I was going and doing my draft reaction for Kobe Bryant and Tariq Woolen, and my voice was pretty low on that 3rd day. Megan says, I love the fact that Pete and John walked past the professor's seat several times and tapped the nameplate as if to say, what do you think, Professor? Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I love that they had his name played in there too. That was really cool. A nice tip of the hat there to John. Rest in peace. Jordan Kraft, what's up, Brandon? Just got here. What I missed? Nothing. Just trying to, any last folks I need to sell in this draft, and they're few and far between, as most of the Seahawks fans are in uniformity on this one, is that this was a grand draft, an amazing draft. But if there's anybody I got to bring over, I'm going to bring him over here. Nwusu, herbicide. I'm going to try, man. Wusu's going to be about as far as I think I'm going to get on that one. It's just too much of a tongue tire for me. My tongue doesn't turn that way. Unwosu? Okay, I got to go with the Unwosu. I got to figure it out. I got to spend a day just pronouncing his last name. Jack Turner, I found it odd how the vast difference was, at least for me, between the draft and free agency. I was such a fan of the draft and was kind of meh at best on our free agency outside of Uchenna and Sidney Jones. Understood, Jack. I felt very similar to the process as well. As much as I do love this draft, I did not love what they did in free agency as far as spending their money is concerned. I will say, though, that I've got to put a little bit of a asterisk next to that, because I don't like the fact you spent the $53 million the same way that you spent it in 2020, right? Where you had a similar amount of money and kind of spent it similarly in that same kind of fashion. The difference between now versus then, though, was that you had Russell Wilson on your roster. You were going for it. You weren't in a rebuilding state. When I look at the contracts given out this offseason, Jack, I see a lot of 1, 2, 3-year deals at the very most, which to me speaks to the fact that the team understood that it wasn't really headed towards a competitive state this season, and those contracts give them the ability to get out from under them after 1 year, whether they are 2 or 3 seasons. So they really had more of an eye towards protecting that money for future years when they really feel like they'll be competitive versus spending it in the now. And it makes it a lot more understandable to me in how they spent their money in free agency, understanding that they're actually fully embracing a rebuild and not trying to do a quasi go for it thing where you are sacrificing that future for the now, which I wouldn't sign off on. Megan says, if you were watching the stream from Renton, there was a lot of body language between Pete Carroll and John Schneider that showed what seemed to be a shift in power. John Schneider seemed to be in more control, and Pete Carroll was just sitting back and watching. That's the feeling I got from him, Megan. I mean, that's what I was getting. I wasn't able to watch them on the War Room cam, but just the press conferences definitely spoke to that. It just felt like a little bit of a different vibe. Richard says the energy is different because Pete's era is completely gone now. John will be there for more years to come. Pete might retire mid-season, end of the season, especially if the Hawks stink it up, which is likely. Very well said, man. Very well said. And you're right. It's a good chance John ends up outlasting him here. You guys are trying to help me pronounce Wusu. God bless you guys for that. God, my mouth don't speak that way. I can't move those. I can't put those 2 letters together without it messing me up at the start. Frank Buckner, this draft was successful because Jody Allen was bossing John and Pete around what she wanted. John Schneider was trying to trade back, and maybe it was Jody that said, no, you pick here and not reach. It'd be interesting if it was that way, Frank. And whatever it was, if it was Jody, if it was John, if it was them going to a voodoo priestess before the draft, whatever they did this year, something differently occurred, and let's keep doing that again into the future seasons. Robert Jokin, who is your quarterback number 1 in 2023, Brandon? I know it's a bit early, but Will Levis is my guy. It's never too early, Robert. And yeah, that's my guy as well. This year you had quarterbacks coming out that had size problems. Not size problems, but maybe not off what you'd like ideally at the position. 6'1", 6'1.5", 190 pounds, 205. Just didn't have the size. He's got the size. He's got the arm strength. He's got the mobility. He runs with reckless abandon in a way that you like and endears you to the college quarterback, but that you will quickly coach out of him when he arrives at the NFL level. He is fearless within the pocket. There's not a throw in the book that he can't make. Certainly, I need another season of tape to make a final assessment on him, Robert, but he is my quarterback early on, number 1, and if somebody's going to dethrone him, they're going to have to wow me on the tape by a considerable amount. Truffle says, what's your draft grade on the Seahawks? I like all these picks position-wise, but I'm going to have to see them in action first. I don't watch college football much. Nope, we definitely need to see them on the field, Truffles, and it certainly is an early point to make an assessment. I do think normally you'd like to wait a couple of years to make your assessment on a draft, but that's not any fun, right? Like we want to, that's kind of lame. Let's make a draft grade, and I'm giving them an A+. I'm giving an A+. I don't know what these players will be, but I know what I've said at the top of the show, their perceived value is. And the perceived value of this player is at the very least 3 of these players. You got so much value off where they were allotted to go. And then on top of that, all the rest of the players to the draft were at the very least taken in the round that they should have been taken in. If not, you were getting them around later than where they should have gone. That kind of value to me drives towards an A+ draft. And the fact that the 2 of the first 4 picks were towards the offensive line, that you avoided a quarterback, which I factor into my grade as well, because a desperate team in a quarterback position could easily have just pulled the trigger on a 2nd or 3rd round quarterback and said, well, look, we're not married to him, but we're desperate, but we're not married to him, but we're desperate. You didn't do that as well. That factors into the grade for me. The landmine that you avoided factors in for me. A+. A+. Ryan Wilson says, laughing out loud, I love the Nwosu name breakdowns. Yes, if you're listening to me on a podcast or whatever, we've got people in the chat trying to help me pronounce the Owusu name, which is, it speaks to how hard the Owusu name is to pronounce, that there's so many people in the simplification of the pronouncing of the name that are having a hard time phonetically even getting it pushed out for me. He's a top 5 all-time tough name to pronounce. We got to put him there. Nwosu? Yeah, that's up there, right? Michael YT says, oh, look, a report said that the 49ers have been continually underwhelmed by Trey Lance. What the heck are they doing? Keldon, you got to go check out that report, man. Just came out today. I just saw it today, and it's there. User Big Hit says, I agree. Best draft in a decade. Go Hawks. Go Hawks. User Big Hit. Yeah, even a couple days afterwards, it just feels like that for me. Best in a decade. Right there. Right there. Elliot Clark with a $5 donation. Thank you, Elliot. I appreciate you. Says, Lamar is a free agent next year, and Sean Payton is available. Plus 2 first-rounders and 2 seconds. Just putting it out there. Ooh, Sean Payton. Can you guys imagine? Could you guys imagine? And yeah, you got a lot of arsenal next year. You got a daddy war chest of draft capital. You're sitting on $130 million, I think, of cap space. You got quite a lot you're armed with going into next year to go get what you want. Maybe it be a quarterback, maybe it be a coach. You never know. Which, by the way, Miami was supposedly circling the wagons around in this conspiracy theory of Brady before he came back to the Buccaneers was maybe going to try to drive for a trade to the Dolphins, be a part owner in the Dolphins, and then they were going to trade for Sean Payton. And they were only going to be offering a first-round pick to get Payton in, which I thought was kind of interesting. So maybe I thought Payton might require a little bit more if you were going to make a trade for him, but in actuality, that might turn out to be only a 1. Charles Riley, the $5 donation. Thank you, Charles. And as Charles mentioned, if you want to become a member of this channel, it's a very nominal fee. I do a lot of articles. Just did a 30,000-word article on this last draft prior to the draft, kind of a draft guide. I'll be doing another article here soon. So please do join us, he says. Charles says, Brando, I see you can become a patron member of the Hawks Nest. Any different perks than beyond the incredible ones offered on a YouTube for a nominal fee? No, I pretty much offer the same ones at this point, Charles, on both, but I'm going to be expanding on the patron side of it. So I'm going to start probably trying to do more of the film breakdowns over there if I can, because YouTube is just so rough and tough about it, whereas you can get around a little bit of that on the patron side of it. But long-term, yes. At the moment, not right now, Charles. But it's mainly the articles at the head of it. I need to be probably doing more on the expanding the bennies on our members. And that's going to be coming here as we continue to kind of expand with this channel. So it's coming. It's coming. Kevin says it's pronounced Lonus. That makes it easy. Kevin. As you're learning with the Wusu, my last name pronunciations, maybe not one of my strengths, but Lonus. I can remember that. That's easy enough. Ryan Wilson says the N is silent. Usi. We'll see. All right. I'm going to get there eventually, folks. Kevin says, I hate that we are getting bad draft grades just because we didn't get a quarterback. Thank God they aren't running our draft. The draft grades, that's part of what I wanted to nail this show on and saying this is the best draft in a decade, is because you hear some of the national perspective, a little bit of local perspective from certain people, but not many. But you hear the national perspective, and the draft grades are so wonky and strange, and what they don't seem to be dealing with the players we picked, but both for the player we didn't pick and then for where we might have picked from a positional value standpoint. Because the only two places I've seen that's really been able to hammer the Seattle Seahawks draft is, you guys didn't get your quarterback. You need a quarterback. Why didn't you get a quarterback? Oh my God, you need a quarterback. Okay, there wasn't a quarterback there to be taken. Why reach for one? That's not, you would have dinged us if we took Desmond Ridder in the second round. They would have dinged us for taking a quarterback that high, but then they're going to also ding us for not taking overdrafting the quarterback. We can't win on that. And then there's the whole positional value thing on Kenneth Walker, which is, again, just makes me roll my eyes. If we'd taken him in the first round, I can get people, clutching at their pearls like this about drafting a running back high. But when you get into the second round, to be into that state of mind of things feels like a little bit of an overstatement of the situation in taking a running back high. I didn't know we got to such an extreme state of you don't even touch him in the second round either. Like, maybe not ideally, but you just don't ever? No. There's times you do. YDY says a Walker will be 9, then his nickname can be K9. I do. That's pretty tight too. K9 is pretty. I can't argue with that one. Jason says, God, who cares what people did when they were 16, laughing out loud. I was a huge douche in high school. No, it's true. It's understandable. I'm not going to hold a kid responsible for what he was in high school. There was a vibe. There's a vibe on it. By the way, we'll see him. If he balls out this year, I ain't opposed to it. Kind of like a poor man's Dak Prescott in his game when it's going okay. Amari Taylor, you should scout Jaron Hall Jr. from BYU. He's good. I'll take a look at him, Amari. Jaron Hall. Let me write down his name, because I'll forget. Got him in there. Joseph Smiley says 69,000 people at Lumen Field for the Sounders game. Place was crazy and kind of reminded me of our Hawks. Nice. I always say, 12th man, doesn't matter whether it's football, baseball, basketball, soccer, Husky Stadium. We're loud here in the Pacific Northwest, Chuck Seeger says, I've started watching Levis from Kentucky. You're going to like what you see, Chuck. Kid's a baller. Nelson Gamage, Tariq Woolen, Sherman 2.0. It's a little bit of a broad stroke comparison between the two. Are both tall and long. I mean, Tariq's much longer than Sherman. He's okay from a length standpoint. Are they both wide receiver converts? Yes, on both of these answers. Tall and long, wide receiver converts. It's kind of a little bit of where the comparison sort of ends. Tariq is not as naturally able to take. I don't think Tariq's necessarily taken to the position as quite naturally as Sherman did. There's certainly the comparisons there to a degree, but that's the one thing that stands out to me is I think Sherman was just a little more, his tape in college showed you a little more of signs of a guy that was maybe a little more ready to roll. But Tariq's got a little more of the upper end quotient to the physical measurables of his game. He's faster than Sherman. He's longer than Sherman. He's more explosive than Sherman. So it does get hard to make the comparisons between those two outside of sort of the surface level type of stuff there. River Brown says we should get Bryce Young. Maybe. 5'11", 195. It's hard to get around that size build a little bit for me. Jason Tudor says, BS, lots of hot-headed kids in high school turn out to be great players and leaders in the NFL. I'd love to see evidence that shows otherwise. And no, one guy's not evidence. I think you guys are having an internal debate in the chat. Because I'm not taking that stance on, I didn't mean to open up a Pandora's box on this with my Spencer talk. I'm not trying to throw too much shade at him. It was just a little video I saw. I wasn't taking a final assessment. I'm not out on the guy. I'm okay if we end up taking him. If he gets better, of course, on the field. Matthias 2345. One says, I really think Walker, the running back, is going to be the guy in a few years. Look at his game against Michigan, a good defense with Aiden Hutchinson on it. Oh, he was running circles around Aiden and Ajabu and Ross at middle linebacker and Daxton Hill out there. And I think they even had a corner that was taken here. So yeah, he have a game against that kind of defense, that kind of big time game that you need to have. It says something. And yeah, I'm stoked. Should be excited. Whitey White says Walker's nickname is K9 because he's a dog. Woof, woof, woof. That's right. Bring out the K9 unit. Can we get the K9 unit brought out, please? That's Roger. We're going to bring the K9 unit out in 6-8 Tango Rod. Corey Pitts, I'm not into us going for a quarterback this year. I wouldn't be mad, though, if we brought in Nick Foles just as extra competition in our quarterback room. I do think Nick Foles can play that game manager role. I do, too. And you never know when he catches fire. There's not a hotter quarterback in the NFL history than Nick Foles when he catches fire. Bobby Savage Hill, if we're getting a quarterback next year, this is a prime time for Walker to show what he's made of. A little bit, Bobby. I think he's going to be serving as more of the counterpunch to Rashad Penny this first year. But we're in no hurry with him. We don't have to wear him out quick. Joseph says they probably signed Levi to use for game planning for Kyler. Maybe. Maybe so. Maxwell says Bo was such a steal. He was a steal. Meow Mix says, I want Walker's nickname to be Cowbell, so we can hoe up the game with our cowbells and say, I need my cowbell. Where's my K9? Today, now, K9, fast running back, all day. He runs through the line, dancing like a ballerina all the time. Why do I? Anyone going to Germany for the game? Watch out if they ask you to want to shower. Joseph says it would be funny if we went 1-16 with our only win coming against Denver, laughing out loud. That would actually be kind of funny. Herbie says, I wonder if ticket prices are going to drop this year. Not with the inflation where it's at. Howard Moss says, I like Kobe Bryant. You should like Kobe Bryant. Best, won the Walter Thorpe Best Cornerback in the Nation award last year. And that award's got a pedigree to it. 2 years all ACC, first team cornerback. Multiple years of production, fits the cornerback build for what they look for as far as metrics go. You should be hyped for him. Daniel Bailey, the quarterback position is important, but not more important than having a full solid team around him. Compare 2020 Rams without Matthew Stafford and Matthew Stafford without the Rams. Agreed. Very much so agreed. Rob Terrell says, I think Walker could win Offensive Rookie of the Year. He could, but I think he's got the talent to do so, and he's got the ability to land, hit the ground running, and go. He's not a guy that you're going to have to wait for him to figure the game out, I don't think. The issue does come in is you have Penny maybe coming back, finally ready to roll, finally healthy, on a 1-year prove-it deal where he's trying to now go out there and earn that big money next year. And it could be a little bit of this is the gift of true competition at the position. You have a guy in Walker that has the juice to be that number one guy next year, but you just don't need him to because you've got enough juice on the front end with Penny. But if Penny goes down, then absolutely. That's right. Kobe Bryant's the Red Mamba. I love that nickname. John Reed says, Locke, may do better than some are expecting, though it doesn't matter to me this season. More concerned with the team developing on both sides of the ball, so when we get a franchise quarterback, we have something. Well said. Daniel Bailey says, even though I like the Walker pick, if we traded back with the Vikings, Colts did with one pick later, we could have gotten Travis Jones and Nakobe Dean instead. Hard not to prefer that. My only issue with that is just when you reverse engineer this a little bit to what you want the team to be going forward. And if you have inconsistencies in running the ball because you get decimated with the running back room like you've been decimated to injury on your frontline guys, and if you don't have the backup guys in place, your running game's not going to go anywhere. And the impact of having an Nakobe Dean, Travis Jones, instead of having that running back combo, could make it to where your offense isn't as functional as you need it to be. But I understand where you're coming from too. It makes sense going that route. Megan says, that's a late start for me at the Hawks Nest. For most Hawks games, I'm in bed by 7 p.m. to get at 1 a.m. It's going to be weird on that one. Well, does the Germany game, so the Germany game doesn't fit right to your time at that point? Isn't that right down the, isn't that a little closer to your normal decent time? Herbicide says Irish coffee for me during the Bucks game. Ryan says, keep in mind both Penny and Walker are outside zone guys. They can run between the tackles, but not with a lot of power. But Walker will bounce the run outside if he gets the chance. Boy, will he ever. He loves himself some bouncing. He loves, especially if he bounces it left. Keldon with a $5 donation. Thank you, Keldon. I read that report. It's a Philly reporter that created a clickbait headline. There's a response from a Bay Area outlet contesting his info about it. Okay. Well, thank you, Keldon. Appreciate the update. Really appreciate the donation, of course. And like I said to Keldon, you know where I sit on Trey Lance. So I'm not a guy out on Lance. I sit on my evaluation of those quarterbacks of the previous year's draft. I stand on my evaluation and where I put him as the number 2 guy in that class. I hope he can develop. It's no surprise to me, Keldon, and I'm going to be patient with him. It takes him a little bit longer to develop. He was the youngest of the quarterbacks who came out in that draft. I think you got to give him a little bit of time there. So I'm not making any final assessments on that. We have some fun with it. I'll jerk a chain here and there, Keldon, but I still stand back on what my initial eval is on that. Nolan Arvance, thank you for the $5 donation. I appreciate you, Nolan. He says, I can confirm the season ticket prices have not come down. Game day prices, however, ... Last year, I bought my Uber driver just to use all our tickets. This year, I brought my Uber driver just to use all our tickets. Nice, Nolan. Nice. Yeah, that makes sense if it goes down, and maybe the prices will kind of go down the further closer we get to the game. But that just tells you, Nolan, maybe the better bet here is to just wait a little bit down to game time, that you'll be able to get something, SeatGeek, or what are those places that you would want to use to try to get a last minute ticket. Thank you for the donations, guys. Very kind of you. U2K says, every time you mention Barton as a starter, I throw up in my mouth a little. Well, I mean, hey, they could still go out and make a trade, Huey. And I don't think that there's teams that are, sitting on guys that they're married to at the inside linebacker position. So there's other options out there, and I think that they're going to probably pursue those options here before the start of the season. It's just not been the main high priority at their list for some of the other positions they're looking to address. There wasn't a lot of middle linebackers in free agency either that made a lot of sense. So it makes sense why they've waited. Why do I? 2023 Seattle has an extra one, a fifth improved to a fourth, and a sixth added to what they had in 2022. More draft capital and the fourth most cap space in 2023. I like where Seattle is compared to where the Niners are now. Just two different states of teams, definitely. Why do I? Niners are in their state of going for right now where their roster is. We're in the state of, kind of building ourselves up a bit. But yeah, certainly for the future, we're going to be in a little bit of a better state. That's for sure going forward. The Niners, once you do sign, it looks like maybe now there's more of an opening here to them signing Deebo Samuel. You sign Deebo, you sign Bosa. You've got now three players taking up a huge amount of your cap portion, and it's going to make it a little harder on the other end of things. John says, I hope Curvin comes back to where he was at. He started to play well when he had the opportunity. He did, John. I do wonder of where his fit is in a 3-4 defense as a middle linebacker. He's a guy at that 5-3 build who, to me, it would seem like needs a little bit more protection in the middle up front, having those two defensive tackles in front of him versus just the one guy, which opens more of the door open to a guard coming downhill on him at the second level. He says the only reason you can't think of examples is because nobody gets rid of their franchise quarterback because before he's proven he's out of gas. Valid point. John Ruiz nose tackle by committee. It will certainly be so. 40% of the snaps to Al Woods, 20% of the snaps to Brian Monet, and Poona Ford's just going to have to hold on for zero life at the zero tech. That's how it's going to play out. John Ruiz, BBK is not that bad, and I disagree that he is small. same weight and size as other linebackers on other teams who are rated decently. I mean, he's very fast too, John. So don't get me wrong. He's very quick, very athletic prior to the injury, but he is like 5'11", 225, maybe at the most 220, but we'll see. I'm open to giving him a shot. I'm not against it. UGK says veterans are concerned with their diet. DK is 23 and son of two elite athletes. He's been working out since he was a child. As the years go by, he'll definitely monitor his intake to ensure performance. Sounds right. Cliffy says Tyler McShay's take on next year's early mock draft has us taking Tyler Van Dyke at quarterback at number 9 again. I don't know what, but I have a feeling that we could go higher than that. Me too. I think we would trade up if we're sitting at 9 again. Robert Pennington, my brother's in the house. Robert said, pretty sure Charles Woodson was a Thorpe Award winner. He might have been on that. I sort of just wrote down the top names on the list on mine, but that sounds right. Like, I think Charles Woodson won it as well. Good company, though, Rob. Good hit rate on both those guys, be it the Doak Walker Award for Kenneth Walker or the Walter Thorpe Award for Kobe Bryant. Boy, you're talking about some tongue twisting there. You look at the history of those guys that have won that award. Most of those guys have gone on to be very good NFL players. Some of them have gone on to be stars. Some of them have gone on to be Hall of Famers. Not saying that's where Kobe's headed, but just that's the group that he lands in with this by winning that award. Bo Hello says, I saw Bo Jackson as a top value pick on an NFL post. What's up with that? I thought he was a nobody in the 7th round. A nobody. Didn't he win the Heisman? Oh, Bo Melton. Bo Hello he threw me off on that. I was like, what? Value pick in the respect, there's some people that had Bo Melton in the 4th and 5th round, Bo. A lot of people that make the assessment with him are looking at the quarterback play, especially at Rutgers, and they're saying, you had non-functional quarterback play. That's got to affect this receiver on the outside who flashes so much in his play and in his ability as he tries to operate around this quarterback position. He's also got a guy with a little bit of a highly touted background, being a guy who was, I believe, recruited by Ohio State. So people see of you getting that in the 7th round and go, look, if he had gone to a program that was Ohio State with Stroud throwing him in the ball, is he taken in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round of this last draft? And it's a good question to ask. So it's just a bit, you're getting a guy a couple rounds versus where he was going to go. I think the no-name aspect of that you referenced, though, of the nobody aspect is a little bit having to do with really the not coming from a prolific offense and then having kind of miserable quarterback play. He's having to work around. Bash Gordon, aloha, Hawks Nest. Personally, I'm most excited about our offensive line and the new addition paired with Rashad Penny and our new running back Walker, the 3rd, who might just be the second coming of number 37. He might just be. I don't know. Somebody else mentioned this. I think if you're looking at Seahawks history of great running backs in Seahawks history and you're saying, who does Walker most closely compare to? Kurt Warner, Chris Warren, Sean Alexander, or Marshawn Lynch? I think it's Kurt Warner. Warner would be the guy that he most resembles in his running stop. The stop and start ability, the shimmy shake. He might even run with a little more power than Warren did, though Warren might have been Warren was really elusive. Alexander Wheeler, how many Thorpe Award winners have panned out? I know Heisman winners don't have a great track record in the NFL. I'll give you a list. I actually assembled this list, Alexander, when I was prepping for the show here today. So let me read it. Let me read it through here. I'll give you here's a couple of your Jim Thorpe Award winners, of course, going to the best cornerback in college football. Kobe Bryant won this award last year. And let me give you this list here, though. As my brother said, I believe Charles Woodson's on this list. You have Antoine Winfield, Deion Sanders. I don't know if you heard that. Pretty good player. Terrell Buckley, Benny Blades, Deion Figures, Roy Williams, Terrence Newman, Malcolm Jenkins, Eric Berry, Patrick Peterson, Desmond King, Adoree Jackson, Minka Fitzpatrick, Grant Delpit, and Trevor Mooring, who went in the second round last year. So, Alexander, it's a vaunted list. And yeah, they do tend to be pretty successful. Truffle says, there you go. I like the baseball answer, Brandon. Brando makes me feel better about our team. It should, Truffles. As I've said, this is a year to be patient. We got to let these guys develop. The talent is coming up and around. They didn't have somebody that could spend the money that they had to spend the money on this year in free agency, so they're being patient in that approach. The patient approach will pay off for them and this team long term. And that's the best part of it, and sitting and just kind of sitting in the pocket of it. I know people want to see them get good and get good fast, but it is a long year, and we've barely just gotten warmed up. Wired Speaker says, I don't think Bo Melton's mom appreciated Brendan's comments regarding widespread female STDs as the crowning achievement of Rutgers. Maybe not. Was it Brendan that said that, or did I forget? I don't know. We were at the end of 3 days of heavy draft coverage. You never know what comes out of our mouths at that point. We're also trying to bust some jokes out from time to time. It gets very dry without the jokes. I'm sure the females of Rutgers are very, what's the word I'm looking for? Chastity driven. Alexander, a lot of great teams have rough patches in the major leagues. Look at the Astros so far. I don't see them being as bad as they started when they were fourth in division. Laughing out loud. Well said. And I agree. Charles Wright with another $5 donation. Thank you, Charles. Appreciate you. He says, Brando, are you a Top Gun guy? You better believe it. I grew up on Top Gun. We got a need for speed. There's 2 O's in Goose. 2 O's. If so, will you catch in IMAX? You can like, subscribe, and become a member on 2 different tiers, folks. Check it out. Thank you, Charles, for letting the folks know. And yeah, you can become a member at any point in time here on the channel. Help this channel out, help it grow, help support it, as Charles does. As I think probably my top donator all time has been you, Charles. I appreciate you on that. Am I a Top Gun guy? I am a big-time Top Gun guy, and I'm hyped for this film. Obviously, we're in an era now, Charles, where some of these sequels are coming out 10 years, 20 years, a little bit too late, and it definitely does affect a little bit on their, I think, kind of magic towards the original. But look, there are those 80s movies that just, the nostalgia of it is going to ring too hard, too strong. And you got me. They're going to do that. They're going to show the flight deck on a aircraft carrier, and we're going to get the music building on the first swell, and I'm going to be in. There's a part of me that hopes too that with the pandemic on it, Charles, and them having a little bit of extra time on the movie, that it's let them, the more time you give those productions, maybe the better you can kind of refine it a little bit. And that's taken a little bit of time to come out, hopefully. I certainly am digging some of the stuff I'm hearing about in the, and how they're taking the real approach, not the CGI-driven stuff, which is make it feel all that much more real. Jason Leonard says, record prediction after the draft, 8-9 for me. Probably about right there for me too, Jason. You land about right there, give or take maybe a game one way or the other. But I sit right about in that place. I do think you've made yourself at least one game better off of this draft and being as good as you have, if not 2 games better than where you were for me coming into the draft. Bash Gordon says, I still have the same cheeseburger stain on my Cortez Kennedy jersey from the day I met him, laughing out loud. So no washing for me. Plus, I split a little pop on it during the draft, and it came out okay. So no wash. That's the way to do it, man. You got to keep that good greasy juju's going, man. Got to keep it rolling. Herbicide says CJ is supposed to go to the Texans. Lions get Bryce. Giants get Levis, and we get Cameron Ward. It could break out that way. It could go down that way, that's for sure. Ethan Mangani, thoughts on Caleb Ellaby? I like him. I think he makes a lot of very good throws on his tape, a variety of different throws you like to see, from throwing with power to throwing with some touch. I wasn't wowed by the arm strength. Good enough, kind of. I don't know if I see enough of a diamond in the rough type that I could say this is a guy that'll be like a Gardner Minshew coming in. He's going to be a camp arm that's brought in. He'll be just kind of another guy, I think, at the end of the day when it's all said and done. I do like him better than the Levi guy, as far as being maybe a little more pro, ready to go out there and be a backup if that was called upon him, but certainly didn't blow me away. Strawberry says, I'm not sold on our wide receiver picks. Understandable. I do think, like you, he says right below there, Strawberry, where you are taking flyers on those picks. And, when you're in the 7th round, wherever you're drafting, once you get past the 4th round, folks, 3rd round, even once you get out of the 3rd round, you're really taking kind of into more flyer states of things. You're really outside of certainties or known quantities. John says, I don't care how to pronounce Wusu. I don't care how Wusu is pronounced, as long as I'm pronouncing another sack again by that Wusu guy. Me neither, man. Me neither. Whitey White says, Wusu is still 25, as young as some of the guys in this draft. Chargers keep telling me he's likely a breakout star. Hope they are right. Me too. It's fun to watch him. I don't know if you guys watched. Seahawks on Twitter released a little cut up of him and Taylor they're up on the sleds on their knees practicing their hand placement and quickness off the snap. And Wusu was sort of like talking trash to Taylor about getting his hands up there quicker than Taylor got his hands up there. And they were having kind of a nice back and forth little competition there in practice, which was kind of fun to watch if you get a chance. Brian says, anybody who is discounting Jacob Eason's potential ability is to start may be in for a surprise. That would be a surprise. Shock the world. Cliffick, makes me question, should we draft a quarterback next season or try to get Lamar J in the offseason? I think you try to go next season for a quarterback. Remember, with Lamar Jackson, you're going to have to pay him a boatload of money. And you just got outside of Wilson's deal, which was inhibiting your ability to build roster appropriately, correctly, in the way that you wanted to do it. Better way to go here now at this point is to me, going and getting a rookie quarterback on a rookie deal. Alexander says, yeah, pundits being so aggressive towards us not getting a quarterback would be horrible general managers. Zero vision. They all say we are in a rebuild, yet show no signs of patience. Yeah, I feel the same way on it. Short-sighted thinking. You need this, go get that. How good is your draft if you're just drafting always to need rather than trying to go for best player available, which is what this draft was, in my opinion, driven a little bit more by. You did attack need at the same time. Part of that is you had so many needs, but you weren't being driven towards just need alone, as you have been in recent drafts by picks that were like LJ Collier, for instance, or Malik McDowell. But yeah, that's why I don't take much to what their assessment is of the situation, because Alexander, these pundits are obviously not looking very closely at the Seahawks and where the state of the team is and what they're trying to do here. James Black says non-elite quarterbacks that have won a Super Bowl in the last 10 years. Russell Wilson, Manning, Foles, and Stafford. Oh, there you go. Those are valid. I do think Foles was playing a little. I think Foles might be a little bit of an outlier there, and I do think Stafford was playing at elite. I don't know, James. The last two I'm not sure on. Foles is not an elite quarterback, but he was playing at something that was far beyond the Nick Foles state of play when he was on that Super Bowl run with the Eagles. And Stafford, by the end of the year, was probably playing as good as any quarterback in the league. I mean, he had a couple of those throws. I mean, I don't know. He was playing pretty close to elite status there by the end. John says, hope we get a quarterback in 2023 draft. We still have some holes to fill as well. Don't want to tie up lots of money for an expensive quarterback who runs well, but not a very good pocket passer. Exactly. Bree says, thoughts on Will Levis out of Kentucky. This guy has it, I believe. I think he has it. Maybe that's the best way to put it, Breeze. I watch Bryce Young's tape. I like it. I watch C.J. Stroud's tape. I like it. I watch Will Levis's tape and I go, he's got it. Whatever it is I want at quarterback, he's got that thing. And I didn't have that feeling for any of the quarterbacks in this year's draft. So there's physical things I can talk to you about, mobility, quickness of delivery, clean delivery, good footwork in the pocket. Base doesn't tend to get too wide like a lot of these quarterbacks like Howell was in this, or like Ritter was in this last draft. He's got a very strong arm. He knows how to layer throws with anticipation. There's not a lot right now in his game, and it just calls upon why I got to look more at his game that I really can pick apart in. A true blue, top 5 quarterback prospect. Rob Terrell says Jim Nagy also thinks this was our best draft in years. It just was. Unequivocally, it just was. I went back and looked through these recent draft histories, and it's just, folks, there's some dark history draft. 2023, Christian Michael in the second round, nada. Jordan Hill, 1 year and done. Chris Harper didn't even make the active roster. Jesse Williams, chronic, I think, knee injuries, didn't even get on the football field. Harold Simon, nothing. Luke Wilson was your crowning achievement from the 2013 draft. 2014 draft, Paul Richardson, okay. Justin Britt, okay. Cassius Marsh, not really here for very long. Kevin Norwood, no. Kevin Pierre-Louis, no. Jimmy Staten, no. Garrett Scott, no. Eric Pinkins, no. Kiro Small, no. Oh, okay, let's go to the 2015 draft. Frank Clark, great. That's one of your great value spots in getting him in the second round. Tyler Lockett, awesome. Second round pick for him, or third round pick for Lockett. They have lists. I thought he was a second rounder. Nonetheless, 2 great picks. But then from there, Terry Poole, Mark Lewinsky, Ty Smith, Obum Gwacham, Christian Sokoli, Ryan Murphy. So even in those drafts during this time period where you might have a player or two, then the whole rest of the draft's just a complete miss, a complete whiff. And then we get to 2016, Jermaine Ifedi. He played a lot of games here for you, didn't play very well. Jermaine Reed, solid, great pick there in the second round. But then CJ Prosise, whiff. Nick Vannett, whiff. Reese Odiambo, whiff. Quentin Jefferson's come back now, marginally good there. Alex Collins has come back again, but how good's the impact there on that one? Joey Hunt, Kenny Lawler, Zach Brooks. I can go through these kind of like this, but this draft, it's home run after home run after home run. And certainly they got to play it out now. Certainly we got to see them on the field and doing it. But that's that phrase I come back to. Perceived value is what we're talking about here. I can't make the assessment off what they're going to be, but I can make the assessment off what the consensus boards would tell you, off what guys like Jim Nagy would tell you who've been a scout in this league. It's not just the Daniel Jeremiahs or the Mel Kifers I'm talking about when I say consensus. Consensus being as many different areas that you can draw in as possible. And the consensus is that we had our best draft in years, and they're absolutely right to say so. The Holy Taco, if Willis would have fallen to the 4th, do you think we would have taken him? Probably. That's probably just too good a value at that point. Yeah, I'd say probably. Charles, Kenny Walker was K9 at Michigan State, so he can keep that rolling. It'd be sweet. It's not been used before. Who else has been K9? I've never heard that one implemented before, so I'm good with it. I like it. Breeze, what are my thoughts on Yunga Nixon Yamba from OSU? If he's a future prospect, I have not had a chance to dive into much of the future prospects. I just got done with the 220 prospects I was able to get through in this last draft. So the grind will begin as I did last year. Every year I do this, I get a few more extra players. I think like the previous year I got up to like 175, maybe even pushed near 200. This year up to 225. I'd like to get up to 250, 275 by next year's draft if I can get through all the tape. But I will take a look at him here at some point, Breeze. Brian Meyer says, please stay away from Bryce Young at all costs. College system, quarterback, nothing more. I'm getting a little more of that feel for myself in the way I look at him here. Rob Terrell says, B, is Caleb Williams eligible for the 2023 draft? I think he is. I'm not positive on that, but I think he is. Nick Guzman says, I hope we go 10-6 and make the playoffs, and Locke throws 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns just to piss the media off. And all the Twitter draft experts off. That would be awesome, Nick. Hell yeah. Klivic, I like Noah Fant now. He's already out in our community in Seattle and is having fun time. I see him as a likable guy off the field. Hope Noah Fant can become a superstar tight end. Hey, me too, man. And again, top 20 first round pick. A guy who would, if he had been in this draft class, would have been the first tight end taken off the board by far. So he's got the ability. He's got even some good production recently. He's not been a complete bust. Just got to bring it all together now. Will R, should we bring back KJ for linebacker cover? He said he would like to come home. I'm open to it. I don't know how he fits into a 3-4 defense versus the 4-3, which he was really a fit for, Will. So if you're running more of 3-4 looks, what is he going to be, an inside linebacker in a 3-4 defense? I mean, I don't know if he's got that in his game at this point in time in myself. He was kind of a rotational guy with the Raiders last year, did okay with them, but I guess my question is, how much does he really have left in the tank at this point? I love KJ, but that would just be my question. Nick, Pete loves Locke. It's an underestimated how bad Denver treated Drew and how bad they are at developing quarterbacks. Being liked and being in a place where you're actually wanted could be all Drew needed. Pretty amazing too, Nick, because you have John Elway at such a centerpiece in that organization in recent years, and you would think that he would understand that as well, being a guy that was hittered for years at times by his own coach there before he finally got Shanahan in the house. Megan says, Hawks Nest, nope, still will be midnight start, but as I said before, I'm hoping to extend the Seattle trip to include the Munich game. Nice. That'd be better. Jordan says, Brandon clickbeat. Kellen says, ha ha ha, I'm just here to keep my enemies closer. He's the only godfather keeps your enemies close. I'm telling you, Michael, keep your enemies close. Keep your friends close. Keep your enemies close. Clinic, I love how people see Locke as a Brett Favre quarterback if he gets traded to a new team. Hopefully he does end up having a Brett Favre season. That'd be amazing. Ricky Beaver says possibly the Hawks probably won't be super competitive till at least next year, but hopefully I'm wrong about that. Hey man, you never know. You never know. That's for sure. Nick Guzman says, I've never really seen any running back that reminded me of Sean Alexander. Me neither, not purely. He was a uniquely his own kind of guy. TB Filler says, who is worth more, DK or Debo? I'm a hardcore Hawk fan, but I'd have to say I'd be more inclined to pay Debo $25 million. Not me. Debo Samuel's kind of, to me, more of I've got to manufacture touches for him, whereas I think DK can just kind of get open on his own. I love the totality of Debo's game. I don't want to take away from it, it kind of feels like I got to tear down Debo to build up DK here, which is not what I want to do. It's more about my view on DK and my view of DK's upside, which I think DK still has more room and growth within his game. I think Debo is what he is, and I think the Debo's prime and the amount of time that he's going to be able to be highly productive is going to be reduced as the Niners have used him like a running back and probably wore him down by doing so. I don't see that same sort of reduction on DK. I think DK can still play another easily 10 years in this league with his size speed quotient. And so I would be much more in favor. I think it's much more less risky going for DK Metcalf than Debo Samuel. David Phillips says, yeah, but Baker takes care of all the cleanup around the stadium after the games. Well, there is that. He is a good janitor. I'll give him that. Nick says, I'm wondering what big-time free agents there will be next offseason. It seems like everyone is getting paid. It'll be interesting to see how it goes with that, Nick, especially with the salary cap increasing. You know, and it was not the deepest crew as it was even this year. So, be interesting to kind of monitor that as a development. Charles Riley says it was Brenda that said that. I thought it was very revealing. By Sunday, I was loopy, so I don't know. I might have said something crazy like that. Why do I says Kurt Warner was my second football crush after Joe Montana. He was the thing of beauty, could break ankles. I was a kid and cried when he blew his ACL in '84. Those were career enders and he had two. Yeah, he was never the same. I always say why do I after the torn ACL, you could always see him even when he was opening up on the outside, breaking a big run. You could still see him kind of dragging that leg along. It just didn't have the same sort of kick that it did before, but he was an amazing running back, and he could have been an all-timer if he didn't tear that ACL, I think. I think he could have been really looked at as one of those guys. But, yeah, it's good. He was awesome, man. Crazy Loner, what in the world is Pete and John doing at center? Do they have that much confidence in Blythe? They do. He's played 4 years in the Rams scheme that Waldron runs now. They need more of a scheme-specific center that can move in space. That's Blythe's game. That's not what they've had at the position recently. More than a game-changing mauler at the position, you need a guy that can get to the edges, that can pull, that can get to the second level of linebackers. Blythe can do that. He knows what he needs to do in the scheme, and he knows where he needs to go, and he's going to get there. Is he going to be a game changer? Is he going to be above average at the position? No. But should he be probably at least average at the position? Yes. And is that much better than where we've been in recent history with the likes of Posick and Haynes? By a wide margin. Zach Schwegler, how are we getting the next quarterback? I want Bryce or Stroud, but we have to trade like 10 picks. I mean, maybe. Let's just take, Zach, the historical baseline here when we look at this situation. And the historical baseline here is you usually have to give up 3 first-round picks as the equivalent to move up in a draft, including that year's draft pick. So if you're sitting at number 9 and you've got to give up a pick this year, and if you're giving up, instead of doing like the 49ers kind of had to do where you're giving up a first-round pick in this year's draft and then next year's draft and the year after that, if you're able to give 2 first-round picks and let's say 2 high first-round picks in this year's draft, next year's draft, that can move you up versus having to do the 3. Or you could do, instead of having to do the 3 in successive years, you can do 2 first-rounders and a second and a 5th maybe. So, yeah, you do have to give up a lot to move up there, Zach. But historically speaking, if you are willing to put the assets on the table, there will be a team that'll be willing to flip that for you, even a team that might be needing a quarterback. And folks, we're going to go for about another 10 minutes here, and then I've got to be flipping over at 6 o'clock. We're going to be going over to Brendan's channel, over our Seahawks, Brendan Nelson, as we do our weekly B&B show over on his side of it. So we will be kind of wrapping this up here over the next 10 minutes or so. Darius Brown, okay, guys in comments, diehard Hawks fan here, but if we went for 7 wins last year, are we not a bottom 5 team now? Top 5 pick? It's possible, Darius. It's possible. Remember last year you had a much harder schedule. You had a first place schedule last year, as opposed to this year you've got a last place schedule. You also had your number 1 quarterback broken for a lot of the year as you were bringing on a new offense. So you're having the returns of a second-year offense now, right? When you get a new offensive coordinator, you usually don't get those returns in the first year. You usually have to wait a year to see the benefits of that. So it's possible, but it could also go the other way with this too. It's a little hard to tell on that, but you're certainly not maybe off. Clivic says, what do you think about the current wide receivers that are unsigned, like OBJ and Jarvis Landry? Do you got them going anywhere? I'll say Odell Beckham Jr. goes to the Raiders eventually. Jarvis Landry. Jarvis is a little bit harder. What about the Packers eventually making a play for Landry? They already got kind of some, they already got some slot guys. I don't know on Landry. Landry, I'm a little more unsure. Maybe the Colts. That could make some sense. John says, I feel getting Jackson would be going backwards because he would demand Russ-type money, and that would inhibit building the team where it needs to be for a Super Bowl run. Well said. Yes. The benefit of Jackson to the Ravens, part of the reason why it's just part of the reason. Part of the reason the Ravens haven't paid Jackson is because they're trying to milk out every last drop of this rookie contract so they can build a team around him to do so. And you do remove that now when you bring him in and pay him all that money. And he just doesn't have, to me, enough as a passer to fall back on that he can carry a team if he's being paid that much money. Darius Brown, I don't like Bryce Young more than Stroud, and Florida's Jefferson is crazy good if he declares. I think the key point here, Darius, is that there's just a lot of really good quarterbacks coming out next year, at least early on. And it seems to be a way better class than this year's class. I'm starting to lessen on Young the more I'm kind of reading and looking into him a bit on it, but I do think that there's going to be at least 4 or 5 true blue guys here when it's all said and done that are worthy of being high first-round quarterbacks in next year's draft. Cliffix says, can't believe nobody's talking about Jadeveon Clowney still being a free agent. I don't know if it's because the money he wants or he was having a bad season. I feel because it's about the money. No, he had one of his best seasons in recent history. I think he had 11 career high in sacks last year, still dominant as a run defender. The market wasn't great for edge rushers outside of a couple of guys. If your name wasn't, Chandler Jones or Zadarius Smith, it's a little bit harder to get your money. Clowney's tended to have to wait to get his money in the previous times that he's had his contract up, being the Titan 1-year deal that he signed or the Browns deal that he signed last year. I do think it would have been nicer to me rather than Owusu at 2 years and $20 million. I probably would have been more in favor of doing like a 2-year, $30 million deal on a Clowney myself. I think there's a little more full all around the board impact there. But it'll be interesting to see where Jadeveon goes. He's just waiting to strike, and to his credit, he's done well by being patient. He still ends up getting his money. Joy Hunt, I still remember getting pancakes at John. That's right. John says, Clowney could play end in a 3-4 if he decides to play in Seattle again. Yeah, you could move him anywhere on a 3-4. He could do 3-4 end. He can play the spinner role, which you have your, if you have a 3-4, you have your defensive tackle in the zero tech over the top of the center. Then you've got your defensive end over, let's say, over the top of a tackle. This leaves the guards uncovered. You bring Clowney up in a spinner role over the top of a guard. He's been pretty good in that role in recent history, and you could do that again. 99 Eclipse, do you feel that there's any chance Locke ends up surprising everyone and becomes a beast? I'm kind of pulling for the guy. Absolutely. I did a show based around this about a month ago, 99 Eclipse, called Favre Lock. And it was just a little bit to, again, show that there's a comparison in history of NFL of a guy who's maybe a little more not a highly touted guy, like a top 10 first-round pick, but even, let's say, a second-round guy. And in his first spot, doesn't do all that well, kind of a rough road, doesn't really work out too well, then goes to a second spot and then finds his good landing space. There is these examples in NFL history. I can't say that I can count on it happening 99 Eclipse, but you're putting the process in play. He's going from a quarterback unfriendly environment to a quarterback friendly environment. He's going from a coach who it sounds like hates quarterbacks and hates young quarterbacks at that in Fangio to a guy in Coach Carroll who is very much a guy to bring a young quarterback along, bring a young player along, to instill confidence in them. So the factors are going to be there at place for him to do that and take advantage of that. But now he's just got to show it on the field. And Alexander Wheeler, I don't think we go after Clowney either at this point. I think we're kind of set there, like you said, especially after the draft. And anyway, I do think it's to bring up Wilson and Manning at least is valid UA because those guys weren't playing at necessarily at the elite level at that time to where they were when they were in their prime. Crazy Loner, do you think we have a chance at bringing Dunlap back? I don't know where he fits into this defense, Crazy Loner. I don't know where he's a 4-3 defensive end. I just don't see his fit as a 3-4 guy and where you're putting him. It's part of the reason why he didn't really work in Cincinnati, despite having a little bit left in his game. Tony C., I would say if it's not KJ now, better inside linebacker, then we would be better than when he was younger. I would say it's not if KJ now is better at inside linebacker than he would be when he was younger at OLB, I would say is KJ now would be better at inside linebacker than Cody Barton or BBK. No, it's very true, Tony. I mean, that's the question at hand. But that's also not as much a slam dunk that he's better than Cody Barton at this stage as an inside linebacker. And I don't have a good answer for it. I mean, on this one, I've never seen KJ in an inside 3-4 linebacker role before. So it's completely a guess. I do know that he's lost a couple steps and he's not as fleet of foot as he once was. And I know Cody's much faster than where KJ was at the end. But I'm not a big Cody Barton fan, so don't get me wrong. If they brought him back in, Tony, I wouldn't be, I wouldn't be moaning. TB Filler's got a good to see a Dante Hightower could be interesting. He's definitely got some history as a 3-4, still out there. And John, I don't know if Dunlap fits into a 3-4. I don't think so. Alexander was just speaking of DK. When Shannon Sharp was asking him how he felt about himself compared to other top receivers, I wish DK mentioned his double team rate. I want to see some dog and a possible team captain. Yeah, maybe he thought that'd be like an excuse, and maybe he just thinks he's so awesome he should still be beating double teams. You could want that too. Colin E. Benchley. Did you see the film study that Shane Waldron and Michael Bumpus did on Drew Lock? I'd seen most of the plays before, but it was interesting that Waldron was keying in on for the quarterback. I haven't had a chance to check it out yet, Colin, but thanks for bringing it to my attention. And I'll go check out his deal because it definitely gives you a little bit of an inside look into Waldron and his process to see how he breaks stuff down. And that's information I'd like to have in hand. Shaylish, ready. Thank you for subscribing. Appreciate you. We're on the road to 10,000. You're helping us get just a little bit quicker, a little bit faster on that road by subscribing today. So I appreciate you. John Ruiz says, I don't know, Kyle Fuller's Brendan's favorite center. Is it? I got to check him on that if that's the case. Why? I was having a hard time coming up with a comp for how Walker runs. The best one I could think of is Gale Sayers. Not on the same level, obviously, but those types of moves. He is. I'll tell you, I'm liking the Kurt Warner one the more I think about it, to be honest with you. A little bit of a different build to their body style, but same kind of way that they win as far as breaking tackles goes. Huey says, Locke has plenty of opportunities in Denver. He was often reckless and careless with the football. Nothing abrogates a defensive-minded coach more. Very true. Very true. What's up, Jace? Good to see you in the house. Doing some homework. Herbicide says, are you and Brendan doing a show in like 20 minutes? We are. So I'm going to be signing off here soon and bouncing right over to Brendan's channel at Seahawks Brendan Nelson, folks. So I'll be on at 6 o'clock on Brendan's channel here. Be bouncing right over. 12's forever. What do you think about Levi Lewis? He's okay. He's a little bit of a left-handed Kyler Murray, but not as sudden, not as quick, not as much of a, little rabbit back there behind the pocket. But he's a camp body. I don't think either of these two quarterbacks that we brought in are going to do a whole lot to move the needle on the team. RSF, is there any possibility that we may not draft a new quarterback because we can bolster other positions other than quarterback, linebacker, offensive guard, defensive tackle, defensive end? 100% RSF. No doubt about that they could take that pathway. Like I said, there's a spot here where they could look to, rather than look in the draft, they might look to make a trade. And it's hard to know year to year what quarterback's going to be available. And maybe there's a good, talented guy that's available next year that they like instead of going with a rookie because just in addition to the reasons that you say, there's other positions they want to bolster. They also maybe want to bring in a quarterback who's going to be ready to get this team going from day one that they don't have to wait on his development on. I don't know which route they're going to go for sure with that. They haven't exactly indicated. My belief is it's probably going to be going the rookie quarterback route, that they're going to try to get as close to the 2012 blueprint as they possibly can. But there's a lot of open doors for possibilities here. Darius Brown says, what do we do with Dwayne Brown? Well, Darius, he's a free agent right now. So Dwayne Brown will not be re-signed at this point. You're going to sit with the two tackles that you got currently on the roster, I would imagine. Cliffy, how many picks do we have for next year? I think we got 2 1s, 2 seconds, the rest of the allotment of your picks. And I think we got an extra, I want to say it's a 4 from the Witherspoon trade to the Steelers last year. So I think you have an extra pick in addition to that. Herbicide says Tyreek wants to foot race DK for $50,000. Who you got? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know, man. Probably Tyreek. He's just so crazily freakish in his speed, but I bet it's close. I like that DK threw shade at him like, oh, you're going to challenge me now? Well, I just got foot surgery when I challenged you last year and you didn't have anything to say about it. Is that how that is, Tyreek? You're going to wait till I have the foot surgery? John says, what do you think will be the Seahawks options at center long term? I don't think he's here yet, John. I think they're going to be drafting a guy long term here eventually. I think Austin Blythe is a placeholder until you can get to that center of the future. Whether that's a free agent or whether that's a draft, I don't know. But he's not on the roster as it currently stands. Crazy Loner, Cody and Brooks seem to be the two starting inside linebackers heading into the season. That is the way it looks like it's going. Agreed. YDY says, think about the change to the running game style from up the middle to turn a 2-yard gains into 5s to outside zone. Let's turn 5 yards into 25. I hope so, YDY. I've been pounding the table for more outside zone runs, for being less predictable in the running game, for just hitting the A gap over and over again. That you've got to do more on defenses in the modern age in the running game, specifically attacking laterally rather than everything needing to be, horizontally basically in your approach. So I hope you're right. I hope you're right. RSF, thanks for the answer, Brandon. No problem, RSF. Thanks for watching, man. Appreciate you. Empower Code, hey, Brendan, just joined. Thanks for all these streams. Love chilling here with the 12 fam. Keep doing what you do, man. I really appreciate your efforts. Well, thank you, Power Code. I'm having a hell of a time over here, man, where the growth is as great as ever. I love doing these streams with you guys. The draft was just an amazing time period, being able to just talk shop with you guys and nerd out on the draft for 3-4 straight days. It was awesome. It was awesome. Like I say, it's my second Christmas, and that's the reason why. So I have a great time with this, man. You guys are always awesome in this chat, and I do appreciate you guys for that, because every show I come in here, you guys bring it. You bring it. Jonathan Acevedo, what do I think about KJ Wright coming back? It's a possibility. I think it's a long shot at best at this point, John. I think the team has decided that they just want to move on here, but it's not out of the realm of contention, and I'd be okay with bringing him in, especially if you could bring him in on kind of a lower end deal. There's no real risk or worry at that point by doing something like that. TJ says, is this the best draft on paper in the last 10 years? It's a good way to put it, on paper. I've been using the word perceived value, but I think on paper might even be a better way to put it, TJ. And yeah, I think by and far and away, just look at the recent history of 10 years of drafting. By far and away, this is the best draft in 10 years since 2012. And second place isn't even close. It's got to still play out, but at least in my first assessment on it, that's where it's at. It's good to see you here, TJ. David's got Metcalf 100%. Hell yeah. Hit that like button, says Ryan. Yes, please do. If you like what you're listening to today, I really do appreciate if you do two things for me. Hit that like button. If you're not subscribed, please do get subscribed. We're trying to get to 10,000 this year. That's my goal. We're having the greatest year of growth. You're already helping me get that growth. You new folks that have come aboard to the Hawks Nest. So if you're not out there, come aboard. Let's get aboard. Let's get moving toward that 10,000 pace. Let's see if we can hit that mark here before the end of the year. But as well, please do hit that like button if you can. If you're already subscribed, it does help the channel out. Helps me out tremendously. Lear End, I'm very excited about the Seahawks, what the Seahawks are doing at the moment. So much potential drafted remains for the season, and still so much phenomenal draft slots for next year to come to fill the holes or compensate or whatever. Very, very true. Very true. They've set the stage. They've set the table. This was never going to be something you were going to solve in one off season. It was going to take a couple off seasons to really get everything to where you wanted to get. And they've done everything in the appropriate fashion this off season, especially this draft. And you look to your point on this next year, 4 picks in the first 2 rounds, the 4th most amount of cap space in the entire NFL, not a lot of dead money hit you're going to be sitting on, not any bad contracts you're on, all the flexibility and versatility in the world to truly go for it immediately, not to have to wait. All right, so thank you, Charles, for mentioning that too. Like and subscribe. I'm sorry, we're going to wrap this up, folks. I've got to be bending over here onto Brendan's channel. We got the B&B show coming at 6 o'clock. I will be back on Sunday, so we're going to discuss probably, I think, a little bit on Sunday, and then next week we've got the schedule release on the 12th, which will be the next Thursday. So we'll be going probably live on Thursday next week during the day and at night with Brendan on the channel. So we'll be double dipping next week on Thursday as well. Please do hit that like button again if you like what you're listening to today. I do appreciate everybody in the chat for hopping on in. Another awesome chat here. I'm glad to hear you guys are hyped. Get hyped, folks. Like I say to you now, get hyped. Get hyped. This team has not, in the last couple of years, given you at every turn reasons to always root and cheer. You root for your team, you cheer for your team, you hope for your team the best, but they've given you some tough beats, some bad beats. Bye to Hall of Famers, diminishing returns on a scheme, lack of willingness to change, lack of willingness to sometimes embrace their mistakes and fix them. This offseason is getting a little different now. This offseason, we're seeing signs of these things going away. Now there is a new hope. There are no guarantees into the future. There are no guarantees. But you can do intelligent things to set the stage to get it as close as you can get to a guaranteed state. And then let Lady Luck take over. And that's what our Seahawks front office has done with these moves, especially in this draft. Best draft in 10 years by far. They absolutely killed it. And as I said leading up to the draft, one great draft, simply one great draft, can take you to the height of heights. Now, it's not easy to do. It ain't like every other team every other team's doing it every year. But if you can be that team, that one team to tap into that spirit, even in just that one draft, you can hit the ignition switch, the NOS button, find that extra gear in the stick shift, and really take off. Let's see if our Seahawks can do it. I'm hopeful. I know you're hopeful. Keep that spirit, keep that optimism, though. Because I'm telling you, they're giving you something. They're giving you a lot of reason to smile right now. They're giving you a lot of hope right now. The hopium should be smoked up in wide quantities at this point. I should see billows of smoke coming out of your guys' home for as much hopium that's being smoked. Thank you, as always, for watching. And please, don't you ever forget, I don't have to remind you after this draft. After this draft, everyone knows what time it is, but I'm going to tell you what time it is anyway. Don't you forget, don't you ever forget, even in a rebuild, even when it was at its darkest times this year, I wasn't going to let you forget. I ain't going to let you forget now as it's starting to get a little bit brighter. That sun's about to shine. Those clouds are about to part. Get ready. Get ready. And you better get excited because I'm excited. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for all of the support, all the donations, and of course you watching. And don't you ever forget, go Hawks.